the everyday Hogwarts player. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 676, Stern Professor Flitwick. Harry was actually a little skeptical about what Ginny said. Indeed, the more advanced a magic, the more ordinary the special effects it creates, or even close to zero. But if a skilled wizard wants to show off, he can create more beautiful light and shadow effects than an ordinary wizard who casts spells with all his heart and soul. They can even design the lighting and shadow effects when casting spells based on their own aesthetic skills. Makes them look better. His mind was now focused on the last question, why there was no mention of the fire dragon in the puzzle. But Harry didn't dwell on this question for too long. After all, he is different from the other three warriors. He already knew the answer. The arena where they compete is in the sky. The mount is a dragon. What he didn't know was the existence of this setting of obstacles and treasures. But now, he knew. However, Crumb didn't seem to know about the fire dragon yet. Puzzles. He probably thought that they would. Harry and the others were just leaving the common room and heading towards the charms classroom on the 4th floor. Walking through corridors, skillfully dodging disappearing stairs. 10 minutes later, they arrived at the charms classroom. Their dean stood on a pile of books with a smile as usual, greeting the students who came in. Ron even went up to Professor Flitwick and asked for a candy. It must be said that after the 3rd year, they became much more familiar with Flitwick. This is because, on his days off, Professor Flitwick likes to go to the Three Broomsticks to drink with his friends. His favorite drink is sherry soda with ice and conch shells. During this rare year when we were allowed to go to Hogsmeade every Sunday, they ran into Professor Flitwick several times. Go on adventures with Belle. He said that when he was young, he spent too much time dueling. Because people always make fun of their short stature of less than 1 meters and their fairy ancestry. He was forced to raise his wand to let these people see how powerful this small man was. In the end, he even brought back the duel champion trophy. However, this also prevented him from traveling around the world after graduation like ordinary wizards. Coincidentally, most of the professors at Hogwarts have never had a graduation trip. Professor Trelawney is a stay-at-home mom. Professor Sprout couldn't bear to part with her plants. Professor McGonagall was in a relationship with a muggle at the time. Professor Dumbledore is at home taking care of his sister. Professor Snape got involved in gangsterism. Hagrid has a criminal record. His wand was broken, and he has been working as a guard on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Professor Remus knew that it would be difficult for him to find a job as a werewolf, so he was busy looking for a job. Overall, among the current professors at Hogwarts, only Professor Riddle has gone on a graduation trip. But Harry knew that what Professor Flitwick said was not actually accurate. In fact, the same is true for Professor Riddle. His true identity is a fragment of Voldemort's soul when he was a teenager. It was sealed in the diary before graduation. The days that followed were also spent in the secret room of Malfoy Manor. After becoming independent with the help of Dumbledore and having a physical body, he only studied in the Muggle world for a while. The rest are at Hogwarts. As the class bell rang, Harry also stopped daydreaming. With a meter of sunlight shining in from the window, the spells class began. What spells do you remember learning from your first year to now? Professor Flitwick asked. However, before anyone could answer, he said, wand biting spell, levitation spell, fire spell, softening spell, cutting spell, unlocking charm, locking charm, restoring charm, dancing charm, limp legs charm, swelling charm, shrinking charm, freezing charm, universal breaking charm, tickle charm, and flying charm. He paused and said, it took me almost 5 minutes to recite the names of these spells just now. However, how many of you can skillfully cast all of these spells one by one? Or use the universal breaking spell to stop the effect of the opponent's spell? Seeing the students who were silenced by his words, he said seriously, today's content is, 2 people in a group, let me repeat the spell I just said one by one. One side uses a universal breaker spell, and the other side uses a spell other than the universal breaker spell. Okay, Harry and Ron, you two go first. Harry stood up immediately after hearing this on the other side. Ron was very confused. Didn't we talk about forming a team? Why did Professor Flitwick call out my name directly? Very good, Harry, very good. You defended well. Ron, your freezing spell needs improvement. The spell for the unlocking spell is Alao. Next pair. Longbottom. I have never seen such a great universal breaking spell. You are very talented in this area. Next pair, Anthony, you use the universal breaking spell. I know your level, you are very familiar with other spells. Michael, you start with a levitation spell. Thus, in this unusual atmosphere, the spell's class ended. Everyone in the classroom lowered their heads. Even Harry, Neville and others who were praised were like this. They all wondered why Professor Flitwick had changed. Become so severe, similar to why there used to be nearly 10 weeks until final exams. There's a reason why it's so important to assign a lot of homework during the Easter holidays, but isn't this the way it should be? Just 10 weeks. I almost forgot that you are a king of rolls. Ryan said, covering his forehead. What is the king of rolls? Nothing. Let me put it another way. It's just like when you're obviously hot, but your mom still thinks you're cold and puts more clothes on you, and when your teeth are obviously healthy, your dad still thinks there's something wrong with them and doesn't let you eat desserts with high sugar content, Ryan explained. Hermione then nodded heavily and said bitterly, I understand. This is really too much? It is still 6 or 7 months before Voldemort is resurrected. Rounded to the nearest year. Why are you in such a hurry? It's just a cricket, Voldemort. Hermione seemed to have absorbed a rebellious spirit from the example Ryan gave, and her whole body was filled with dissatisfaction. The cute rabbit teeth were also revealed, the cheeks bulged to the point of talking nonsense. So, if Cricket Voldemort is resurrected, I don't have to intervene. Ryan smiled wickedly and poked Hermione's puffy cheek with his finger. Ouch! Hermione opened her mouth to bite, but Ryan pulled it back in time. She bit her tongue. Ah! The pain brought Hermione back to her senses. Ashamed and annoyed. Her round eyes were filled with tears and her little face was red. A gray film appeared from the air and penetrated the bodies of the two people. Chapter 677 Dragon Claw Powder. This is a conversation taking place in a corner of the lounge. 3 wizards with oddly twisted eyes were talking. They intended to whisper to each other as if to prevent others from eavesdropping. But the sound is very loud. Almost everyone in the lounge could hear it. Harry, who had just gotten up and was about to walk to the hall with Ron, yawned, so he stopped. Fidgety people do you think is the easiest to use? Harry acknowledged, feeling that he was indeed a Ravenclaw. Knowing how to study so early, he has also read this book for him personally. The tongue-hardening curse, the head-shaving curse, and the pepper curse are the most useful. The hard tongue curse can make the enemy unable to recite spells. Unless he can cast silently, that way you can easily deal with your opponent. The pepper spell can make the enemy sneeze, resulting in the wrong spell being recited. This will generally cause the enemy to backfire and suffer backlash. The final shaving charm, Harry discovered, could also be used to shave body hair. After all, it is different from the cutting spell. It only targets the hair and will not harm other parts. Simple and efficient. Very good. 1 galleon. Absolutely no unforgivable curses in that book. Ron was more surprised because he saw the short students gave a copper nut. But the fat student took it as if it were a gold galleon and took a bite. Not bad, pure gold. At this time, the last tall and thin student looked at the fat students and said, I don't agree with your point of view. Personally, I think pasta should be mixed with freshly made Polyjuice potion. Because the power of this magic circle will directly affect the maximum bearing capacity of Light Wheel 2001. Hey, listen to me. The reason why I keep emphasizing the socio-economic development of wizards is that because the proportion of unicorn tails in the custom-made wizard robes of Tufan clothing store is decreasing year by year. Do you understand what I mean? Let me give you a simple example. When you cast a spell, the magic factor in your body will react with your saliva to produce the Kachet potion. Commonly known as Gamp's Law of Deformation, this will have a serious impact on the number of magical creatures in the wizarding world. Harry and Ron looked at each other in bewilderment. Ron, I almost thought I was a muggle. Golden galleons are not pure gold. Still 5 months away. They were only in their 4th year, and unlike the 5th-year students, they did not face the pressure of the ordinary wizarding level, OWL, exams. It's not like 7th graders have to take the most important final wizarding test. Newt, why do you want to suck dragon claw powder? Not only did I suck it, I also bought the wrong one. Pomfrey, cure them. Today is Saturday. The team competition for the second event will be held the day after tomorrow afternoon. Harry and the others had originally planned to go to Hagrid's place to relax after Ginny came out. Hagrid's cabin had a TV installed. Because Hagrid is following a bite of Britain and plans to learn a few dishes. Who would have known that Harry and Ron would encounter this kind of thing? What's wrong? He looked listless. Why don't you go back to the bedroom and rest for a while? Ginny, who had finished putting on her makeup, came to Harry in a bounding manner. Looking up at his green eyes from below, he was filled with worry when he realized something was wrong. Really? Don't you see me as your brother? Ron raised his eyebrows. After complaining a few words, he roughly repeated the conversation just now. He then explained the cause and effect. How could someone mistake Foxy's dried feces for Dragonclaw powder? Or Ravenclaw? If it's a Gryffindor or Hufflepuff student, then it's possible. Ginny was also briefly surprised. Harry explained, Ginny, you have to admit that Vixen's dried shit doesn't smell bad. Just like the claws on a dragon's stinky feet ground into powder, it has no odor. Ron was a little dissatisfied with what Ginny said. Why can't Slytherin admit his mistakes? Most of them look like trolls. Ginny glared at Ron as if he was an idiot. Isn't Draco your good friend? Did he say that? Because of Draco, Pansy and I are kind of acquaintances. When we were chatting, we talked about their secret to passing exams, Dragonclaw powder. It was expensive, but for most Slytherins it was just a small price to pay. And there are no side effects. Although the effect can only last for a few hours, it cannot be compared with the permanent uplifting effect of the BAFE Brain Refresher. But you have to know that BAFE's Brain Refresher is the potion that is most likely to go wrong, even for the potion master. If it fails, it won't be visible. If ingested by mistake, it will turn the wizard who takes it into an idiot. Slytherin is cheating. Ron was a little outrageous about this. Ginny just shrugged. It can't be helped. Dragonclaw powder is not banned. It's just expensive. It cannot be used as a common product to review before exams or to improve brain power and prevent mistakes during exams. If our school had its own dragon farm, I would venture to say that Dragonclaw powder will act as an overt health supplement used in classes and review. Damn rich people. Dragon skin tape and other weird gadgets. Ginny reminded, I need to warn you, Ron. There is no good way to test Dragonclaw powder. Unless you can personally cut the nails of a living dragon and grind them into powder. Otherwise, you may have purchased some other powder. I added some refreshing potion in it. What about them? That's because they have a dragon farm. The supply market of Dragonclaw powder has always been smaller than the buyer's market. It's not something you can buy with money in the wizarding world. Magical skills are the most real and direct rights. Pure blood families that have this channel will not release Dragonclaw powder to other wizards who are not from their family. The reason why Slytherins can do this is because wizards who have dragon farms are using Dragonclaw powder to win people's hearts. Maintain your network. As for you, Ron, you should study hard. You're not stupid. You're just lazy. Ginny explained. What? So I have to kneel down to buy Dragonclaw powder? To those damn Slytherins. If I had known this, I would not have given Norbita to Charlie to send to the dragon farm in Romania. That way, I will have endless supply of Dragonclaw powder. Chapter 678. Another explanation for. Let's go to Hagrid. I think he might be secretly raising a dragon now. After Ron said this, the three of them didn't even eat before heading towards Hagrid's hut at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. It wasn't that they didn't trust Hagrid. But I know him too well. With Hagrid's current abilities, he could raise 4 or 5 dragons in the Forbidden Forest without being discovered. Record. In addition, the 4 dragons used in the previous competition have been in the Forbidden Forest and will probably have to stay until the end of the second event. It is very likely that this will arouse his desire to raise a dragon. Harry was very worried about this. Although the Fire Dragon Research and Restriction Bureau has begun to redefine new work content involving dragon breeding qualification examinations, opening dragon breeding factories, and researching dragons. That's why Charlie returned to China to work, but all this has not yet been officially implemented. Just like Charlie is still looking after the 4 fire dragons used in the competition with his colleagues from the Romanian dragon farm. Hagrid was a man who lacked patience when it came to the little cuties he considered. Harry suspected that Hagrid was up to his old tricks again and was secretly raising a dragon. Ginny, on the other hand, simply didn't want Harry and Ron to be alone together. Even on the way to Hagrid's hut, finally, Ron simply wanted to ask Hagrid for some Dragonclaw powder. He was the only one of the 3 who was looking forward to Hagrid raising a dragon. So, the 3 of them came to Hagrid with their own thoughts. As soon as the door was opened, Harry didn't care about Fang and rushed over to lick his crotch until it was covered with saliva. He said directly, "Where's the dragon, Hagrid?" "Haha. Harry, you know it. I said you would definitely know it before this month. Hagrid stroked his beard, full of pride. You do this. This is against the law. Harry frowned. Ron, however, was grinning from ear to ear. You're amazing. Where's the dragon claw powder? Or, should I do the manicures for the little dragons? Ginny stood on Harry's side and sighed. Hagrid, Hagrid. But Hagrid was confused by what the three people said. He rubbed the back of his head. This is my job, working with the Ministry of Magic. How is that illegal? And, Ron, I don't have any dragons here. Harry and Ginny froze. They both immediately realized that the facts might be different from what they had guessed. But Ron didn't seem to notice, and instead became even more excited, and he's an adult. That's even better. The claws are bigger and produce more powder. What powder? You're not planning on competing with dragons, are you? Hagrid turned serious. Competition? I mean, you raised it. Ron said puzzledly. Harry on the side said belatedly, Hagrid, don't you secretly raise a dragon? And Hagrid looked at Harry suspiciously. You didn't guess. What are you talking about? Ron suddenly felt like an outsider. Being squeezed out. He was the only one among the three who knew nothing. Didn't you already know that the second individual competition involves riding a dragon? How come you didn't guess it? We already figured it out. The puzzle involves Vila, since you have guessed it. Then Ginny spoke. That's a hint. Enter the Forbidden Forest. He will find you. That's why you said it was the Ministry's job. The reason Harry and we didn't know was because we were solving the puzzle at night. The dragons you command, Hagrid, will not create fire in the woods. Also more eye-catching. No need to search. And they are more flexible in the sky though. That is, the sky is our domain. But in order to save energy and rest, the fire dragon is more willing to stay on the ground. Are you really our Weasley's child? Ron looked at Ginny with a complicated expression. Someone this smart definitely doesn't belong to our Weasley family. All the Weasleys should be at my level. Harry couldn't help but smile bitterly at Ron's words. Although he couldn't hear Ron's thoughts. But from what Ron said, it felt very ridiculous. After all, among the 7 children of the Weasley family, only Ron was the one who was often suspected of being their child. Now Ron was taking the initiative and Ginny simply rolled her eyes at this. She even worked as Ginny, who was standing by, also understood the whole story through their conversation. Hagrid sighed. The last one? Does that mean all the other warriors know? Harry asked. Hagrid, I'm afraid. You're actually the second to last. The last one is Maxim's student. Quickly Hagrid waved his hands. No way. If so, what kind of job is this? My job also includes one more thing. That is to arrange a meeting between each warrior and their fire dragon. Run in before the individual competition begins. You can agree on some instructions with a dragon. Harry clenched his right fist and waved it, showing great excitement. This will eliminate the influence of the Vila. As expected, the Vila affected the fire dragon. All we have to do is blindfold the dragon when we compete. Guide them with instructions. So, the sooner you guess the dragon, the sooner you find Hagrid, the more advantage you will have in the next game. There was a sudden silence in the hut. Harry was no longer excited. This was all because of Hagrid's suddenly red eyes. I can't really do any job well. I accidentally revealed the news again. Vila affects fire dragons. There is also information that can be obtained by blindfolding the dragon and giving instructions. None of them are allowed to be provided to the warriors. Hagrid sobbed. I trusted Quirrell and told him the secret of the 3-headed dog. Ginny quickly comforted her. We just guessed it. We already knew before you said that the Vila affected the fire dragon. Isn't it, Harry? Harry nodded again and again. Yes, that's right. Blindfolding the fire dragon and making up some instructions is also a common method. We can think of it ourselves. Even Ron patted his chest and said, in fact, as soon as you mentioned the idea of running in the warriors and the dragons, I guessed this method. Hagrid, you think too much? Chapter 679, Unconquered Time Loop. After Harry and the others had finished coaxing Hagrid, as Hagrid was leading him to the Hungarian hotel named Lyle, Ryan, however, was happily petting the cat in the castle. Fat Cat Jerry stared with his big round eyes and breathed calmly. In addition, Penelope, who was eating the modified version of noodles with soybean paste, turned a blind eye to this. It can be seen that Ryan has been doing this for a long time. So much so that the cats themselves and the onlookers are very used to it. I've long been used to it. This is true whenever Ryan relieved distress, He would hug Jerry and suck wildly. As for why not find Dr. Hamster Whale, who can eliminate distracting thoughts by himself, because Dr. Hamster Flywheel himself is Ryan's creation. What it can do, Ryan can do too. Ryan sucked Jerry, more to relieve his emotions through his cat-loving instinct. This has nothing to do with this so-called toxoplasma infection, just pure love. Ryan, you still haven't dealt with the one in the time hall. After finishing her noodles, Penelope looked curiously at Ryan, who was almost done sucking the cat. As for how to tell, all because Jerry was getting impatient. Ryan always manages to put an end to Jerry's perverted behavior before he gets impatient. That? Ryan put Jerry down, raised his head thoughtfully, and looked at the mural on the ceiling. Self-sufficient creature that doesn't need eyes, ears, or any organs. Infinite loop. What Penelope was talking about was the time hall, which was another container that stored the power of time besides the time converter. It was a beautiful jar. It contains a cyclical and inexhaustible power. The founder of the Hall of Time extracted this power from the dead Cronus through the name, and injected into it. This renders the vessel indestructible itself, but instead sink as if they were touching a stream of water. Then, under that cyclical force, it continues to cycle from the initial state to the current state. Interestingly, perhaps it was taken from the corpse of some living god, so if there is a living thing, for example, a frog enters it, it does not take the state of fertilized eggs, sperm and eggs that makes the frog die as the initial state. Instead, it will be in the state of tadpoles, just like in the original world line, when a bearded Death Eater was chasing Harry and his friends. Unfortunately, he fell on the table and his head sank into it. His head continues to cycle through the growth process from a baby to a bearded man. But every time Ryan recalled this, he would feel disgusted and relieved. Eater was a child for a moment. He simply grabbed the arm that Harry was waving his wand with. Become a bad teammate. And righteously rebuked Harry, you can't hurt a baby. Ryan was thankful that Hermione was not like this now cyclical force lately. In terms of the power of time, Ryan has completely usurped Kronos' name. In a sense, he is the god of time himself. You can freely go back in time, split time, or stop it. Although this stop does not really stop the entire universe. Instead, an extra period of time is inserted. But it's also amazing. But Ryan has never conquered the loop, the power to create time loops. If facing a higher level enemy, if he fails, he can go back to the past, restart. The cycle continues until he wins. This is the same cheating behavior as loading a game file Ryan only needs to provide, and use to resist the original failure reality. Different correction forces can be used. Magic is something like this for those who have the Ouroboros-like continuous recovery. For the nearly infinite Ryan, nature is nothing. Even if the amount required is large, he can also divide the time, provide a little bit at a time. Finally, it all converges on one time supply. But this cycle is unnatural and requires Ryan to be aware of his own life and operate it manually. But what if his consciousness also died? So, for 100% victory, Ryan also needs to solve the secret of automatic time loop. Although the Grim Reaper is probably already dead in terms of personality, what is running now is nothing more than the ideas he left behind. Even the preference for his own descendants and the concern for the descendants of his other two brothers are human biases. With Ryan's strength, in terms of his own thinking, just like how Dumbledore and others are dealing with Voldemort now, it is impossible to fail. Even if there is 1 in 10,000 chance of failure, Ryan wouldn't be so miserable that even the thought that triggered the cycle of magic died. But Ryan still has obsessive-compulsive disorder in this regard. After all, it's not 100%. What? Penelope didn't know what Ryan had been thinking in the past few seconds. But almost seeing that Ryan hadn't said anything and was just looking at the ceiling, he continued to ask questions. Ryan came back to his senses and shook his head, looking at Penelope. Nothing. That power is the crown of Kronos' magical realm. If I want to conquer it, according to my estimation, it will take me half a month even if I work without sleep. And how did the founder of the Hall of Time extract it, and put it in a plain bell jar? He is a descendant of Kronos. In a sense, he simply manipulated the power released from his dead yet living body based on the resonance of blood. His own magical skills are actually not capable of doing this. It is precisely because of this that he extracted various powers and wanted to conduct research reach the level of ancestors, although this is impossible. The body of Kronos is in the Hall of Time. Well, to be precise, it's everywhere. He is in this concept of time. He is time itself. He is in the ticking of the clock. It is also in the moments of the clepsydra. The rising and setting of the sun is also with him. No wonder there are so many old clocks and timekeeping tools in the time hall. Ryan nodded when he heard this. Yes, They are all descendants of Kronos. In order to better observe Kronos itself, this makes it easier to activate the power he extracted. For research purposes, the props displayed. Chapter 680 Ron gets what he wants. How could such a family become extinct? Facing Penelope's question, Ryan Ubei's pupils shrank slightly. Passing through the walls of Smith's castle, through the jungles, through the tracks, through the ancient and modern buildings, through the ground, and arriving at the top of the stone steps in the Death Hall on the 9th floor of the Ministry of Magic in London, behind the tattered curtain hanging on the archway. He uttered the name in a low voice, Ignatus Peveril. You mean, them and Nicolaio, but they are not immortal. The blood of their ancestors flows in their bodies and is constantly passed on. If it lasts long enough, they may be resurrected in a certain generation of non-wizard descendants. Then, perhaps, the gods will walk the earth again. Bender's modern technology would collapse, along with prosperous Muggle society at that time. It will be a paradise for the strong and a hell for the weak. Even I have to admit it, he was truly a great man. People, he does see himself as a human being. Always has. At this time Harry Potter, a descendant of Ignatus Peveril, was standing with his head bowed kind. Instead, he stared at Hagrid like a little puppy. The brown spikes kept shaking from side to side, leaving scratches on the ground accompanied by flying dust. I still can't believe it. It could be Lyle. It has always been very naughty. It often attacks dragon trainers and fights with its brothers and sisters. It was Charlie who said this, taking care of Lyle, the Hungarian hornet, who will be his brother-in-law's mount for the next race. But it's more like camping aside than taking care of it. Under Hagrid's influence, the 4 dragons were very well behaved. Only operate within the specified scope. It doesn't even breathe fire. You know, this is an indispensable instinct for them, almost like breathing. The only difference is that they will die if they don't breathe, but they won't die if they don't breathe fire. Have you memorized this route? Hagrid turned to look at Harry. You can come to see Lyle by yourself next time. I have spoken to it. It will obey you before the next round is over. Raise your hands. Harry gestured. The fire dragon Lyle on the opposite side also followed Harry's example and raised his right claw. I'm so envious. I wish I were a warrior. Charlie sighed when he saw the scene in front of him. He immediately asked, where are Ginny and Ron? They are always there for you. I heard they are reconciled. And you too. Harry lowered his right hand and tentatively touched the bronze horn of the dragon Lyle. After Charlie hearing's question, he said, they asked for it. Ron was very interested in the dragon claw powder, and he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to help but ask you for it when he came. I'm even more afraid that you will give it to him. This is against the rules of dragon tamers. And Ginny was all about following the rules. After all, according to the rules, only warriors and Hagrid can come here. Is that something Ron and Ginny would say? Charlie blinked, his scarred arms bulging with muscles as he clenched his fists in surprise. Harry glanced at Hagrid subconsciously, but decided not to tell him that this was because Hagrid had just cried for a while. Time, Sunday, in a secret room on the hillside outside Hogsmeade Village. I have dragon claw powder, I have dragon claw powder, I have dragon claw powder. Shut up. Ron. We all know you have dragon claw powder. Harry, I still don't understand why you don't try to persuade Charlie. Being too nice to Ron will make him get carried away. Ginny looked at Harry and Harry, Charlie, said that the metabolic products of the fire dragons used in the competition were not counted as losses. Professor Sprout, for example, often comes over to pick up pounds of dragon dung. Fertilize her plants. After confusion we all know that dragon manure is the best fertilizer. The fresher the best. Like some expensive perfumes, it also requires its fermentation. Dragons' nails too. Nails grow, and that doesn't bother Charlie at all. He said so himself. That's one of the hidden benefits of being a dragon trainer. Harry shrugged. Ron on the side was full of regret. I should have known I could do this. I have long ago. Alice, I have missed so much. I could have grown up drinking dragon claw powder. Harry rolled his eyes. When the dragons are on the dragon farm, all output belongs to the dragon farm itself, although it is possible to steal away the metabolites and count them as natural losses caused by fighting and transportation. But if you are caught, you will be fined. These natural metabolisms will only belong to the dragon trainer when the fire dragon is rented and the dragon trainer is away. But even so, there are often 7 or 8 dragon tamers for one fire dragon. If you divide it equally, there is almost nothing to be gained. And it's usually not divided equally. It depends on seniority. Those with more seniority often get the lion's share, or all of it. Ron, you were just lucky this time. How do you know so much? You're not going to ask Charlie all the questions, are you? Ron frowned. His intuition told him that Harry asked so many detailed questions because of him. As expected, Harry agreed, I knew you would complain. I specifically asked about the details of this hidden benefit for dragon trainers. Ginny clapped softly. You are so worthy of me, Harry. Ron is such a bad bastard and hypocrite. Let's watch TV. Ron changed the subject unnaturally and coughed a few times. Harry finally installed a TV here. Those bastards in the lounge only know how to watch Go Go Squid. It's not that it's bad. But just watching one show is so boring. I want to watch Run. Or Angela baby is so pretty in it. Those long legs when they run. Slurp, day. This name sounds weird. Who is called Angela? Ginny said sarcastically. We are wizards. What's wrong with a weird name? Tonks is also called Nymphadora. And Draco, is this also a name that a normal person would call? Ginny, you think so, but we are just too influenced by Muggle culture. Harry. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 681, Weird Professor Snape. It's so annoying. Why does Snape always stare at me? In the potions class, Ron's lips barely moved as he has expertly muttered again. Harry had no idea how many potions Ron had learned in potions class. But Ron has definitely learned the art of talking without moving his lips. Harry thought that this skill of Ron was very useful and might be useful in future duels. Or maybe it was Ron who had used the technique to pretend in 5th year when they were learning about silent spells. Today is Monday, 1 month 24 day after this morning's potions class. They have no classes in the afternoon. We will face the team competition for the second event. This made them worried and excited at the same time, but Professor Snape was just like usual. He has always been this kind of person, never caring whether there is a holiday, exam or festival after his class. It seems to be the same this time. After briefly introducing the most important course this year, undetectable poisons, a class of poisons that may not be detected by any method, he went on to talk about a deadly poison that was the exact opposite of an undetectable poison that we could never know in our lifetime. Among them, I have mentioned the death potion, a black potion contained in the potion pool on the death row of the Magical Congress of the United States of America. In an extremely cold tone, he described the steps used to execute criminals using this potion in the 20s. First, the death row inmates are taken to death row, where the executioner extracts happy memories from their minds and throws them into a pool of potion. Secondly, once the condemned inmate sits on the execution chair, the chair will float above the potion, allowing the condemned inmate to see their happiest memories for the last time. Finally, the chair will then gradually descend and eventually be swallowed by the potion along with the condemned prisoner. Then, he went on to say seriously that this potion was highly corrosive. In addition to being fatal to humans, it would also corrode objects including wands and execution chairs. After that, he moved on to talk about the potion killer. A wizard who uses a muggle water gun-like object made of special materials that are not corroded by the death potion, as a weapon, and the death potion as bullets. He's from Ireland. Learning in homeschool. After he grew up, he came to Nocturne Alley and made a living by buying and selling some simple potions. Soon after he arrived at Nocturne Alley, he saw the bodies of several dark wizards whose heads or hearts had been corroded clean. At first, no one suspected him. The Auror also thought it was some advanced dark magic. It obviously has nothing to do with him. A thin and gloomy guy with average magic skills, who only brews some strange potions in private and often fails until one of the wizards he killed was swallowed by the potion, and there happened to be a pendant next to his heart, and this pendant is fairy silver, cannot be corrupted. Aurors detected a black liquid on the silver and found it to be extremely corrosive. After multiple tests ruled out the possibility of it being a byproduct of a spell, it was discovered that it was actually an unknown potion. The potion master at the time, Leastad, deduced part of the formula. The Aurors found the killer potion through the ingredients in the recipe because he buys it often. Killer went to Hogwarts. Perhaps he could also achieve something in the field of potions. This article caused quite a stir in the potion community. The American potion master also noticed this. One of them who worked for MACUSA discovered that the formula was somewhat similar to the death potion they were secretly hiding. This story made Ron very uncomfortable procedures. Harry suspected that it was because Snape had described the corrosion marks on the heart in too much detail and even included a picture. I feel like this killer potion is just like Snape himself. Then he was told off by Snape. That's when I uttered that complaint. Harry just felt that Ron was a little confused about this him. And Ron next to him was undoubtedly an eyesore in Snape's eyes. It is inevitable to be criticized. After all, Ron himself is not very good and likes to be distracted in class. After potions class, Professor Snape left a paper on undetectable poisons. In response, Ron complained again. What? I listened carefully to the story about the death potion. What do you mean by undetectable poison? Forced myself to say calmly, didn't you hear? Professor Snape listed several types. He said this is what we are going to learn today. It's just that due to our level and to prevent us from poisoning each other, there are no specific steps. Just took us through it. Let us go down and study according to the classification he provided there again this afternoon. He also noticed that our minds were not on studying. In the end, even Harry was surprised that Professor Snape would become like this. Even if everyone's mind is not on studying, he will not compromise on the content of the course. Everyone is strictly required to practice brewing potions. Also pay close attention to each student. This is also why he is full of venom and partiality to students outside Slytherin. This is why he is still a good teacher in the minds of a small number of Ravenclaw students. But today he actually told a story. Although the story will also be about potions. Harry felt that they sounded familiar, as if the compliments from the previous class had been written in a different context and grammar. Is Professor Snape busy lately? Harry asked Hannah, who was about to go to the potions classroom. He knew that Hannah was well informed. Because of her gossip. Hannah, who was chatting and laughing with Neville and Susan Bones, turned around and said, "Are you asking me, Harry?" Her little face quickly flushed with excitement because of talking about the professor's privacy. The eyes seemed to glow. She quickly glanced around to make sure Professor Snape was not there, and said quickly, "I know a lot about Professor Snape, thanks to Tashi Yumeksu for the monthly ticket and other classmates for the recommendation and subscription." Chapter 682 Ron, I want both. Professor Snape went undercover as a Death Eater when he was young, and other professors thought he was a bad guy. He even broke up with his girlfriend because of it. I know that, pass. Professor Snape doesn't wash his pants. Same with our house's cryboy, Lodge. I know that Professor Sprout advertised his fertilizer. Often goes to the Forbidden Forest to pick potion ingredients, anything else, Professor Snape has a group of fairies. Can you tell me about what he's been busy with lately? Related gossip. After hearing one strange and bizarre gossip after another, ranging from Professor Snape's personal hygiene to his dressing habits and growth process, Harry finally couldn't help but interrupt. He wanted to Hannah get to the point. Ah, is that so? Hannah pulled her pigtails, rolled her eyes and said, I don't know how spicy this is. I know he's been in the papers a lot lately. If Professor Snape is really busy, it could only be this. Okay Harry, can I take Hannah away? Neville came over. Although he knew that Hannah's expression was because of sharing gossip. Hogwarts, okay. As soon as Harry finished speaking, Neville pulled Hannah away. What kind of person is this? He only knows how to follow and protect his girlfriend, but he doesn't even recognize his friends. Ron put his hand naturally on Harry's left shoulder and said dissatisfiedly. I do think some people need to be like Neville. Ginny walked into the classroom. Only then did Harry realize that they had stayed in the classroom too long. Ginny didn't have classes today, and they had agreed to meet in the auditorium after class. What did you say? Ron on the side still pretended to be confused. Wait, you haven't been alone with Lavender in a while. You wouldn't. Harry looked at Ron suspiciously unconsciously. He took a few steps in the opposite direction of Ron and hid behind Ginny. We're not breaking up. Ron lowered his head. He poked his index fingers together, looking very nervous, and said, I just want to calm down. Ginny, it's the same with you. Sometimes you feel like you should be someone else. Every day when I wake up and look in the mirror I feel really weird. Watching her brother Ginny become a sister and be with her fiancé, Harry turned pale and lost all color. Ginny took a step forward, further blocking her boyfriend. I didn't. Whether I was Ginny or Gimli, the sixth Weasley child, I only Harry liked. I think it's better for you and Harry not to meet. That's disgusting. I thought you were back to normal. Then she pulled Harry out of the classroom, leaving Ron alone. On the way to the Great Hall, Harry asked, "Are you being too harsh? This feeling is indeed difficult to get rid of. We give Ron time, and he will recover." Ginny paused and rolled her eyes. "You talk as if you have that, Ginny. I was Voldemort for a while, fighting with Bella in the Dreamland from day to night." Harry, who had enjoyed a variety of battle venues and forms, felt a pang in his heart. Ginny thought Harry was silenced by her words. He continued, "Don't you understand? I am also a party involved. The reason I was able to get rid of Ginley's identity so quickly is not because I said I like you. Instead, I consciously separated the two identities and did my best to be Ginny, which was everything I was supposed to do. I subconsciously ignored Ginley's hobbies, wizard chess, the Chudley cannons, Aunt Muriel, and Madame Rosmerta. But Ron was different, bed. It was just because that was Ron, the other me, who had a bed in the girls' dormitory. Did you notice? How long has it been since he last played wizard chess? Even the smoke bottles aren't made anymore." His tone changed, too. "It's normal that you didn't notice. But I know that is clearly the tone I usually use when speaking." He almost thought of himself as Ron. He did it on purpose. "Tell me, should I say he's disgusting?" "That's unlikely," said Harry. Although he believed it a little, he still said so. "How is it impossible?" "You could call him over and see if he can still make the smoke bottle, and if it's still as quick as before. When I first woke up, I realized I could make a smoke bottle, too. Use specialized emotion spells. But all these were lost after anchoring the self. And he might even be able to use my specialized bat spell now." "Aha!" Harry suddenly shouted, then breathed a sigh of relief. "That's impossible. I also noticed that he had made smoke bottles the same night that we were reconciled. He wasn't even using his wand at that point. Does this breaking of the spell prove that he has actually anchored his self-awareness? How can it be? Did he fall in love with you under the identity of Ron? Siha. Isn't this even worse?" Ginny was so anxious that she turned around. "Wait, I get it." Ginny turned her head sharply. "Luckily I was Gimli. I thought of a possibility. That smoke bottle, no, he poured everything about Ron into that cloud spell. It was only through strong and passionate emotions that his spell was broken. I'm afraid he still secretly inhales the aftertaste from time to time." "No way." Harry quickly closed his eyes. "Now that I think about it, that Ron's hair was too long and too smooth. The figure's facial features were also softer and the skin was whiter. That's Ron. The one that Ginny and Ron were engaged and in love with in their dreams." Sure enough, Ginny saw the answer from the change in Harry's expression. She closed her eyes in pain and covered her forehead. "This shows one thing. Ron took a different path from me. He did not reject Ron, but he also accepted himself as Ron. He want both. Maybe this is a good thing." Looking at the doubt in Ginny's eyes, Harry went on, "Maybe he just wants to be around me as Ron Hydlon and bless you and me quietly." Chapter 683, Quidditch Pitch in the Clouds. Time: 4 p.m. Before the team competition began, all the students and referees came to the auditorium in advance. When the enchanted ceiling turns from gray to clear blue, Dumbledore stood up at the staff table and fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, in 5 minutes everyone, I will invite you all to the Quidditch pitch. Watch the second team competition of the semifinals. We have everything set up there. Some of these facilities will be used in the individual competition on the 24th of next month. The other members of the jury are requested to go ahead." At the staff table, Karkaroff, Mr. Weasley, Madame Maxime, and Volcanova stood up. He walked out of the auditorium amid the applause of the crowd. "Harry, you and Ron?" Neville asked hesitantly when he saw Ron sitting far away next to Terry. "Let's talk about the game," Ginny said quickly. Still chose to be timid. He thought for a moment and then summed up his words. "Speaking of which, how should we conduct this team competition? The fabrics, leather, metals, etc. that we process on a daily basis are said to be made into uniforms specifically for competitions. The purpose of the team competition is probably just to test the sturdiness of the clothes and which college's magic is more effective. If you think about it this way, 99% of the effort we put into this team competition was from our usual alchemy classes. I really can't imagine what's so interesting about this 1%. Just assemble these materials. Do you want us to go to the stadium? Maybe the highlight is the assembly we will be needed to contribute when the time comes when we finally inspect the finished product. I think the lighting and shadows of the magic will be very pretty." Harry guessed. However, time did not allow him to continue speculating. 5 minutes passed quickly. As soon as he finished speaking, Dumbledore stood up again and led the other professors and students out of the hall in an orderly manner. When they walked onto the Quidditch pitch, it was completely unrecognizable. The grass was replaced by something like a cloud. Stepping on it feels like walking on a spring bed. When they walked up the stairs to the stands, Dumbledore and several other members of the refereeing team, who had disappeared after entering the Quidditch pitch, appeared. The 5 of them walked to the center of the arena rapidly. Accompanied by the exclamations of the students in the stadium, the cloud-like cushions that proliferate, separated from the mother's body, an irregular circle formed under the feet of the 5 people. He lifted up the 5 people and they flew into the air. As they flew up, the entire stands began to tremble. What happened? Flew upwards. It seemed like an invisible line between it and the cloud-like cushion on the ground. The cloud-shaped cushion, while connecting the entire stand, also lifted the stand off the ground. 10 minutes later, the entire Quidditch pitch stopped rising. Although the air temperature dropped as it rose, no one cared about it. Back of the stands tried to look down, but the students at the front only saw a cloud-shaped cushion. Only the students at the back saw Hogwarts, which had shrunk to the size of a fingernail, and the entire Forbidden Forest, which could be seen at a glance. Podium where the commentators used to sit were also very excited. Professor McGonagall stood up, with her hands supported, as if an invisible dance partner was supporting her hands. Professor Flitwick cast a spell on his shoes, and the soles of his shoes continued to thicken until he could see the ground. The judges standing on the irregular circle did not speak, just watching this scene, as if waiting for the students and professors to vent their emotions. I don't know how long it took, maybe a century. Madame Maxime spoke up. You all may be a little curious about how this team competition will go. After all, you have already completed the main material processing work. I once said in my first alchemy class, the amount of silk you have successfully refined will be divided by the number of people in each school and recorded as a regular score. It's not just silk though. Other leather, metal, silk thread and all the materials needed for a perfect competition uniform. After processing in the 4 schools, I have also recorded the number of qualified products. They were also divided by the number of students in each school. Among them, the ranking in each course, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place, will get 4, 3, 2, and 1 points respectively. According to statistics, the final ranking is 1st, Boxbutton 2nd, Hogwarts 3rd, Castrobus 4th, Durmstrang. This ranking will affect the order in which you will activate Scott's transmutation spell later. You heard it right. All the materials you refined in the recent alchemy class, before refining and combining together, it is also necessary to blend the magic of all the materials belonging to each spell. Now, the entire Quidditch pitch has been temporarily transformed into a giant Scotty pot. You can look at the hand-shaped imprint on the chair in front of you. Look at the railings in the first row. You just need to follow Mr. Weasley's instructions. After pressing it, just use the method of controlling the Scottish pot to magically blend. All the ingredients are in reverse order. The last school goes first. Schools with higher rankings can observe the operations of the schools that came before them. Finally, I want to say this. The final product of your blending, is it good or bad? It will not be counted towards the score, but it will itself affect the final product of your school's warrior uniforms. Madame Maxime paused. Dumbledore stood up and winked mischievously. Now I'm going to use a spell. You can guess what it is. He raised his wand high and pointed it at Hogwarts. The students in the stands speculated and had an inspiring discussion about what Madame Maxime had said earlier. About 10 seconds later, someone in the stands suddenly shouted, "Look! An amplification charm on himself." The obvious answer is the summoning charm. But time was tight, and I noticed that some students had already started shivering from the cold. Without further ado, students of Durmstrang, please place your dominant hand on the mark. Quotation mark. Chapter 684, the team competition ended hastily. A coat of arms with a double-headed eagle and a deer's head, with Cyrillic letters. It also began to glow orange-red as Mr. Weasley spoke. Then, the wooden box opened automatically. In the alchemy classes over the few past months, the materials they processed flew out slowly, landed on the cloud-like ground. The Durmstrang students on the stage also placed their hands on the marked buzz. Golden lines spread out from the marks they touched. On the white, even, cloud-like ground, a circle was formed that enveloped all the materials. There are 2 small circles, 3 irregular 5-pointed stars and 2 triangles. It is the alchemical array derived from Scott's transmutation spell translated into magic words. Those materials also emitted magical halos of color. Accompanied by the crackling sound of electric sparks, the various magic halos began to collide and blend with each other. This scene really made students from other schools sweat. They all knew that the students of Durmstrang, led by their headmaster Karkaroff, were violent towards Krum in the previous game. When group magic was used to bless Krum, the power of the magic was deliberately reduced this time to the warriors of their school, that is the material of Krum's uniform blending before processing. I don't know if they will do anything strange again. Harry's one of them after all. He knows that the warriors may fall off the dragon's back many times in the next game and the competition is at high altitude in the absence of group magic. A good uniform blessing with various protective spells is very important for a warrior. If not, that's bad falling from such a high place. Even if you can cast a dampening spell on the ground or a slowing spell on yourself in time, or some other spell might also cost him half his life. Harry, look at Karkaroff. Ginny said from the side. She knew what Harry was worried about. Harry turned his head quickly when he heard that. He noticed one thing. Karkaroff's expression seemed ugly, very ugly. So, the magical halos on the alchemy array again. He found that although the crackling sound continued but the sound gradually became fainter at the junction of the magic halos, the colors gradually become unified. How come? Although Harry was happy, he still couldn't help but feel confused. Why have all these students at Durmstrang changed? Order against Krum wasn't actually given by Grindelwald. It was Karkaroff. That's why they were serious this time. Harry agreed. Neville had a point. There was no better explanation than to ask Krum later. About 10 minutes later, as the magical halo turned into a harmonious and unified gray, Mr. Weasley announced the end. Curiously, however, the degree of processing of these reprocessed materials was not scored. Box. A cupola with a capital C emblem lit up below. The box is opened. After the material flies out, Mr. Weasley called the Castelbus students to order. The magical aura of Castrobus's material was unified into dark gray. Lions, eagles, badgers, and snakes were connected together. Glowing emblem surrounding a capital letter H. The magical halo of Hogwarts was unified into two black and golden crossed wands. Cloud, Mr. Weasley said, "Very good, today's game is over." The crowd in the stands roared with thunder. Is this the end? Not rated. Why is it different from the previous team competition? Aren't the uniforms made on site? Wait. Until the students in the stands have quieted down. Mr. Weasley then said, I was right. This team competition is over. The reason why there is no score. It's just because it's different from group magic. The competition of alchemy has been reflected in your alchemy classes every Saturday. We also included the usual points. Furthermore, the results of your alchemy will directly become the uniforms of the warriors. This will be very important for them in the individual competition next month. I can now give you a preview. I think you all guessed it. Headmaster Dumbledore should have said that some of the changes to the Quidditch pitch will be used in the individual competition on the 24th of next month. My prediction is, the next competition will be held in this vast sky, just like the current one. We will no longer organize you to add group magic blessings to the warriors of your respective schools. They may take nothing but their uniforms, their wands, and one other thing which I cannot yet describe. Then Dumbledore waved his wand again. The cloud beneath the feet of the jury began to slowly descend. Along with it, there is a white cloud in the center of the stadium that replaces the ground and the stands connected to it. About 15 minutes later, the entire Quidditch field, as well as Dumbledore and the others, returned to the ground. Everyone in the stands also fell down to earth again. The students in the stands walked out of the Quidditch field according to the divisions of colleges and schools. Neville also welcomed Harry and ran to Hufflepuff to find Hannah. It's incredible, the refereeing team was almost useless in this match. Dumbledore, Dad, Madame Maxime at least performed a few spells. Said a few words. And Karkaroff and Madame Vachanova did nothing. No, you can't say that either. After all, they also led the students of their school to leave the venue in an orderly manner. Although, like Castrobusher, there is also the black version of Dumbledore, Castor Pollach can be replaced. Ron, you? Harry turned his head quickly, half surprised and half happy. However, what appeared before him was, pinching the neck, Ginny spoke in a deliberately hoarse voice. Ginny rolled her eyes, looks familiar. I just noticed that something was wrong with you. None of Ron's stupidity. Are you bored? Harry shook his head. Of course not. With you here, the world is mine. Harry started talking dirty. During Ryan's normal interactions with his female companion, those dirty words he happened to be there and had the honor of hearing. Harry's instinct told him that if he really admitted it, then the relationship between him and Ginny would return to what it was before the breakup. Chapter 685, Baby in the Dream. Roaring waves and icy currents hit this island in another dimension. In the building in the center of the island, a heated conversation was taking place. This conversation took place between a tall, thin man and a very arrogant woman. Although this woman was dressed in rags and sweaty, her long eyelashes still sparkled with arrogance that was ingrained in her bones. It was as if she was wearing the Queen of England's dress and a crown on her head. This tall and thin man seemed to be her husband, but he sounded more vulnerable in his words. His eyes couldn't stop avoiding the woman opposite him. But suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. "You, child? Are you sure? Do you still remember the fish? You know." The man's face suddenly lost color. He bit his tongue and said, "But it is still our Lestrange's child." The woman's eyes suddenly sparkled with memories. "You are wrong, you were not the only two there. To be exact, there are three." When the man heard this, his whole demeanor suddenly changed. His back began to straighten, his voice became stronger, and his eyes no longer dodged. He began to ask questions, but it seemed more like a soliloquy. "Who? Certainly not Traverse. Who likes Crouch Jr. Those two disgusting mulcibers, the relationship between them as father and son is also very strange. They like to use the imperious curse, and they like the feeling that the other party is unconscious but obedient." He said in a mocking tone, "Oh, you are so awesome, it's him." The man didn't care about the woman's weirdness. He seemed to have thought of something, and couldn't stop muttering to himself, "No, no, at least not this child. Her strong jaw muscles are something only a Lestrange could possess." The woman continued to mock, "Are you sure her teeth haven't grown yet?" The man raised his head suddenly and shouted to the door, "Rabaston! Quick! Bring the child here. Here I come. Brother!" Another slightly honest voice sounded. A short and fat man came in. He seemed to be just outside the door. In his arms was a baby girl who was sucking her fingers. When he walked in, he was extremely cautious. There is none of the carelessness that appears on the outside. "What? You think he is your child?" the woman said sarcastically. The short and fat man lowered his head and did not refute. "Just keep looking at the child with loving eyes." Then he said softly to the woman, "Keep your voice down. Now there are only 7 of us in the entire prison. We live far away from each other, but it would be bad if we were heard, especially Traverse and the mulcibers. They are all perverts, and there is no telling what they will do." The tall and thin man on the other side spoke, and the coldness in his tone seemed to be even more biting than the cold wind outside. "She is my wife, Rabaston. You have not forgotten that you should call her sister-in-law. And, give me the child." And fat man shuddered when he heard this. After taking a reluctant look at Bella, whose naked body was exposed because of her tattered clothes, and the child in her arms, he carefully handed the child to the arms of the tall and thin man who was his brother. The tall and thin man carefully held her in his arms, took a deep breath just as the short and fat man was about to step forward to stop his brother. The tall, thin man spoke up, "She is my child. It's time. She will wake up and have milk soon." The man raised his head and looked at his brother. "We'll go out first." He laid the child on a bed of hay and mouse-skin's body and looked at the baby girl who was still dreaming. His eyes softened for the first time. "You really seem to be their child." "No, my child. But it is a pity that my lord will be resurrected soon." Speaking of her lord, the warmth in her eyes gradually faded. In its place was a place Harry was very familiar with. The obsession and shyness of a girl that I have seen thousands of times in my dreams. Hogwarts, Ravenclaw Tower. Harry frowned as he sat on the 4-poster bed in the dormitory. Even though it was a dream, he still realized something. In the dream, or in the reality on the other side, Bella's slender fingers began to stretch towards the baby girl's neck. "I'm sorry I can't have you." The master's slave cannot, just as her hand was about to reach out to the child. Thousands of miles away, in a tower in the Scottish Highlands, the boy woke up and shouted, "No. Don't." The incomplete phoenix magic in his body came alive for the first time, accompanied by a clear phoenix cry and a sudden snap of fingers next to the boy. In the room of Azkaban, the fiery red magic crossed time and space, turning into an invisible wind that wrapped around the baby. Crack! The baby disappeared. The woman with a nervous expression and about to clasp her hands woke up, and suddenly burst into laughter without noticing the wind. He let out the same laugh as the Supreme Lord in her eyes. "Hey hey hey." In this situation, she seemed to merge briefly with the sky of this dimension, which had transformed into Voldemort and engulfed the entire island, and seemed to have sensed something. Apparition. "You are worthy of being my child." She left here. Gone forever, at Hogwarts. On the other side, Harry woke up, opened his eyes and screamed suddenly. He suddenly felt as if something was pressing on his stomach. The sounds of people being woken up could also be heard from the surrounding area. Don't want what? What did you dream about? Don't stop. It was Ron who said this. He rubbed his eyes, got out of bed and walked towards Harry. Then Anthony next to him said, "Are you okay?" Then Neville, who had the best eyes, said, "Child. There is a child. Harry, you are pregnant? In a dream." This sentence made everyone in the bedroom lose their sleepiness. Was the first to come to Harry, stammered. Harry didn't answer. He carefully put the child into the quilt and tucked her in. For some reason, he had the illusion that he was related to this child by blood. Chapter 686 Good Friend Ryan. Hogwarts, inside the room of requests on the 8th floor, on the luxurious big bed, Kate yawned as she put on her clothes. Looking at the picture in midair, he said, "Is this why you screamed, Penelope?" Waved her wand. The midair scene returned to the moment when the child appeared in Sebastian Lestrange's arms. She frowned. Wait, something's wrong. This child was conceived at that time. But then I thought, school hasn't started yet. In July, when Hibiscus comes, it has only been about 6 months until now. Kate shook her head when she heard this. When I watched Death Eaters on Desert Island, I noticed that they ate very nutritiously. It's very nutritious. Penelope agreed. Leon said before that Voldemort is now the destiny of that island. His Death Eaters would not have any physical problems. So premature birth is out of the question. And when we watched the show during this period, Bellatrix's belly was always flat. What's going on? Kate and Penelope asked at the same time. Island has been separated from the real world and is in the dimension of Voldemort's incarnation. Although he will recover when Voldemort is resurrected, this is also a characteristic of ancient wizards, spirits, after all. His disciples were also freed from some of their mundane features with the help of the dark mark on their hands. It's a bit like the Star-Lord in my Uzi body. That time, driven by my magic, God's will, Voldemort's subconscious replaced the poison in the fish with a positive state that temporarily enhanced the wizard's sensitivity but also confused the wizard time. And the magic of Voldemort, and the blood and flesh that Harry Potter invested in Bella in his dream at the Barrow in August. So it's not in a normal uterus brain, in his illusory dreams. Unlike Penelope, who was still in shock, Kate quickly recovered. And asked, "So, Rodolphus Lestrange really found traces of the Lestrange child in that child?" Ryan agreed, "Yes. So the Lestrange brothers, Crouch Jr., Harry Potter, Bella, Voldemort, they can all find their traces in that child feeling of real childbirth engraved in her genes. And to some extent, through the authority of their biological father Voldemort, they all had illusions. The Lestrange brothers and Bella herself mistakenly thought that she was pregnant and stayed in the room, the dimension itself. But what about Harry Potter? Hasn't he been at the Burrow all along? Could it be the Sequence 9 potion, Dark Wizard, that you made?" Penelope's eyes widened. "Bingo. You recall the description of the Dark Wizard? The user will have an extraordinary adaptability to the dark magic, a naturally evil mind, be proficient in hundreds of evil spells, poison spells, and curses, and can easily learn all kinds of dark magic. It is no dark magic that is difficult to get started with. The ingredients for this potion, that is the dark shadow in the mirror world. The remains of Voldemort. Its power truly comes from Voldemort himself and in-dimension materials under Harry's guidance. The bone and blood injected in the dream are now in a state similar to that of an ancient wizard, under the power of Voldemort. Turning the virtual into the real, this lifeless egg, which had only degenerated due to a special condition, developed into an embryo. Also settled in the illusory dream. Wait, Ryan, you mean, Harry Potter borrowed Voldemort's power? Let the lifeless degraded matter containing the genetic material of the Lestrange brothers, Crouch Jr., and Bella's eggs as the base. It turned directly into an embryo. Then it turns reality into illusion, growing up through Bella's dreams, the last to be born? Kate thought this was too outrageous. This is the miraculous nature of magic at work. Magic is omnipotent. Nothing is impossible, as long as you can think of it. Ryan exclaimed. I think if you hadn't helped and added to Harry's strength just now, Bellatrix wouldn't have been able to strangle the child. After all, her birth was so extraordinary. Even as an unformed embryo, he was able to influence these Death Eaters. Although it was borrowed from Voldemort's power. But it's also remarkable. Penelope guessed. Indeed so, but if this happens, the baby girl will kill her own mother, By transferring the damage to herself, her originally blank nature would also lean towards the evil and dark side. This is bad regardless, whether it's the mother killing the daughter or the daughter killing the mother. It shouldn't have happened. Family affection is something that should not be toyed with. So, when Harry summoned the child through his dream, I gave it a push. Dream? Summoning? How come there is no other possibility? If you don't help, Ryan, the child will enter Harry Potter's dream and eventually be reborn in Hogwarts through his body. Kate thought of a more interesting possibility. Ryan shook his head. That's not the choice that kid would make. In Azkaban, there are Bella, the Lestrange brothers, Crouch Jr., Bella, and Voldemort. And there was only Harry in Hogwarts. Well, there is also a young version of Voldemort. If that were really the case, why should I interfere? This is more interesting. Kate stuck out her tongue. I thought it was because you had good intentions and didn't want to trick Harry too much. That's a bit too much. It's more interesting. In my abandoned plan, there is also a plan to let Ron drink the male fertility potion containing Harry's genetic material. Shrugged, because we have this child. Another one would be a little boring. Chapter 687 Harry, this is your child. Time. 5 a.m. The Ravenclaw common room, which used to be dark, was now brightly lit. As a prefect and president of the student union, Penelope has written to inform the professors who will be patrolling tonight and has taken on the responsibility of organizing the order, so the students just whispered behind the archway leading to the common room, looked towards the lounge from time to time. However, there were still students in the lounge because of the position of the baby when it appeared, and Harry's words. Plus, the professors all knew that Harry was unusual. He was able to sit on the sofa in front of the relit fireplace, holding the child. Ginny, using her status as Harry's fiancée, coaxed the child with him. The first to arrive was Professor McGonagall. Came in. She looked at Harry and the child in her arms. Harry was about to say something. But Professor McGonagall quickly stopped him. Don't talk about the child here. She looked at the students behind the arch, then said to Penelope, well done, Ravenclaw. It's not that she skimps on points. It was because of this semester, because of Harry, and the 3 classes every Saturday, Ravenclaw's scores had already taken a huge lead. There's already a gap of 150 points from the second-place Slytherin. Not to mention Gryffindor, who came in third. Professor McGonagall frowned at the thought. Harry seemed to think that Professor McGonagall was a little angry, and he straightened his back quickly. However, he saw a scene he had never seen before. When Professor McGonagall looked at the child, her brows relaxed and a slight smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. This slight smile was like the finishing touch. She seemed to be decades younger, and the net on her head seemed to loosen automatically. Dumbledore will be waiting for you there. She waved her wand. Harry cut it out of the quilt. The quilt that served as the baby's swaddling clothes suddenly expanded. Wrap the baby all over except the face securely. Take the child. After that, she turned her head and looked at Ginny. As for you, Ginny, just go to sleep. It seems that Professor McGonagall's transfiguration just now has a good soundproofing effect on the quilt students. Back to the dormitory. Professor McGonagall walked out of the common room shoulder to shoulder with Harry. After walking down the spiral staircase, Mrs. Norris were waiting below. Filch did not carry an oil lamp, but instead held up his new elm wand and cast an illuminating charm to keep the darkness at bay. Filch's old face softened and his voice lowered unconsciously. Mrs. Norris stopped meowing in her hoarse voice. You continue your patrol, Argus. I will take Harry and the child to my study, Professor McGonagall ordered. Filch nodded, and he and Mrs. Norris disappeared into the darkness. On the way to the study, Professor McGonagall spoke up. Harry, can you tell me now how this child came about? Blood if he told the truth. Will Professor McGonagall and the others still treat this child so kindly? This child's parents are notorious Death Eaters. Professor McGonagall is also a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Many of his friends and teammates died at the hands of Death Eaters. Wasn't sure he even had the urge to hide everything. He hoped that the child could get rid of his sinful parents, be loved by people around him and grow up happily, rather than in the cold eyes or hatred of others. I don't know. She seemed to have a paraded over, said Harry. Because of Harry's ability to lie, when he decided to lie, Professor McGonagall didn't notice the slightest mistake. Instead, she subconsciously believed what Harry said. McGonagall's nostrils widened slightly in surprise. However, she was not surprised for long. Because the study has arrived. Inside the study, Dumbledore came up quickly. After 3 minutes, Dumbledore, who learned the consequences from Professor McGonagall, sighed. The blue eyes carefully examined the baby hanging on Harry's chest through the half-moon lenses. Baby's face to him. How Harry wished Dumbledore didn't know too much about Britain's famous pure-blood families. In the dream, Rodolphus had said that she had the strong eater muscles that only Lestrange had. How terrible it would be if Dumbledore could see that. Harry, it's your child, said Dumbledore. Say. Professor McGonagall also quickly questioned, Albus, are you right? Harry simply didn't have time. He had been at Hogwarts, and before that at the Burrow and Black House. It can't be that he gave birth to this child alone. Dumbledore did not answer their questions directly at first. This child is very special. It is definitely not a normal birth. Healthy. There is no difference from a full-term baby. As for her father, it could only be Harry. The blood connection between them can only be explained by being a father and daughter. As for time, based on the time I observed the children, derived forward, didn't Harry enter that wonderful mirror world during that time? This child may be born in this way. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 688 Accidental Collision. 5 or 6 months. Harry muttered. His memory went back to that time. Because of digesting Voldemort's residue, he was trapped in illusory memories all day long. At that time, he considered himself as Voldemort all day long. In his dreams, he had sex with young Bella many times. Looking back on it now, it's indeed strange things were transmitted to Bella in the prison in the center of the North Sea through dreams. As for Rodolphus' performance in today's dream, perhaps it can also be understood as the anger of discovering that the child was not Lestrange. The reason why he was so calm was probably because his anger had reached its peak. Because he clearly knew that Bella had the urge to kill the child. He still gave the child to Bella. And leave them alone. Maybe. She really is my child. I have always had the illusion that I am related to her by blood. The timing is right too. At that time, I might have behaved like a child. In the mirror world, Harry said hoarsely, Mother. The child seemed to be born from an unreal dimension, combining Harry's strength and blood. Dumbledore explained. But he added in his mind, the mother may be Tom. After the summer vacation, he discovered that although Harry was still a Horcrux, the fragments of Voldemort's soul had been completely digested. If he hadn't already known the identity of Harry's Horcrux, I'm afraid it would be impossible to discover the almost non-existent connection between Harry and Voldemort. In fact, he just discovered a familiar aura on this child. That came from Voldemort, but not the current him. But he was approaching middle age. Consider the time he spent killing the Potter family and creating Harry's mirror world. And tonight, through his connection with Harry, he was born into Hogwarts. Puberty child. Really? Her face flushed, and I don't know what she was thinking about. What? About this kid? Said Harry. The mirror world. Like Dumbledore said, she has no mother. The child shall remain with Harry, said Dumbledore. But in his mind he was thinking about how to tell Riddle about this. After all, this is Riddle's child. Professor McGonagall, who was standing by, looked at the child's cute face and realized subconsciously. But she came to her senses immediately and said, this is a school. This is not good. What should this child do while Harry's in class? I really want to take care of her. But what if Harry and I are both unavailable? Harry was still a child too. And what if Ginny has a problem with it? These are things we professors need to consider. Dumbledore shook his head. I will send a house elf to look after her while Harry's in class. You and other teachers can also take care of her together. As for why I want to keep her in Hogwarts way, it's the uncharted territory of magic that we haven't touched upon yet. I checked and she's healthy. A wizard. The talent is also very good. But she seemed to need to be around her blood relatives. When I cut off her connection with Harry just now, I noticed that the child's magic began to become unstable. I don't know if this is because she was unhappy about her father's departure, or if it was a reaction from the magic itself. But for the sake of the child, don't let her leave Harry. What if it's the latter? Harry frowned. He was worried that this abnormal birth method would cause the child to have defects. Professor McGonagall was also anxious. Dumbledore smiled. The latter? You don't have to worry about that. Even if it is the latter, this reaction will disappear once the child becomes self-aware. The birth of this child transcends the existing realm of magic. Long can the child be separated from Harry? Asked Professor McGonagall. She was already thinking about how to take care of the child. How many baby things have I bought for her? If it is the latter, I calculate that it is about 13 hours. Dumbledore pushed up his glasses. Then I'll take the child back. Harry breathed a sigh of relief. He looked lovingly at the little face of his swaddled daughter hanging on his chest. However, Professor McGonagall stopped Harry and said, "You have no experience raising children. Please leave your child here with me. You can come over after class tomorrow. You just heard from Dumbledore that you can leave her for 13 hours. Harry." He wanted to curse. He finally had a daughter. And I snatched it from him. Harry was so that he wanted to point out that Professor McGonagall had never had angry children either. Same no experience. But in reality, he could only say sullenly, "Okay." Wand, and the swaddling cloth automatically loosened and away from Harry. She shook her wand again, and the stool next to her turned into an exquisite baby rocking cradle. The swaddled baby slowly fell inside. "You must take good care of her." Harry left the study, looking back every few steps. It wasn't the reaction of magic itself as Dumbledore and the others had guessed. "You said that this child could influence others while still an embryo." Dumbledore used magic to temporarily isolate her from Harry. It was because she was unhappy about leaving one of her parents. Harry, but why? Harry just left. Why didn't she respond? Ryan smiled. "Just as you said, this child is not stupid." So she clearly realized that her father was not going to leave her. Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore in front of her were also trustworthy, unlike her crazy mother, who wanted to kill her own child. Chapter 689. The child's mother gets. This is a weird room. Various contradictory elements come together in this small house: the Holy Cross and the serpent that chooses its prey, old ornaments and trendy technological items. The Bible is meant to lead people to good, and the gun is filled with gunpowder. Western cowboy who is good at gourmet food. It has nothing to do with the professor of defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts, but actually, this room belongs to the current defense against the dark arts professor. Tom Riddle, 1/7 of Voldemort. The diary Horcrux took shape. Full-length mirror opposite was replaced by a lifelike snake sculpture that coiled on the wall. According to common sense and previous schedule, Riddle should be resting in this room at this time. It is now Tuesday, January 1st. It was not the days of praying to oneself and resting in Slytherin's chamber on Saturdays and Sundays, but today, this time period. As the body of the snake sculpture began to wriggle, a circular door appeared and Riddle walked out in a black robe. He drew out his wand and waved it around a few times. Everything in the room seemed to come alive and began to move. The door behind it moved in the opposite direction of the snake sculpture and seemed to be swallowed by the snake's mouth. The empty kettle was suddenly filled with hot coffee. It was as if an invisible hand had picked it up and poured the aromatic coffee into the cup on the wooden table in the middle of the room. To the wooden table. Then, the door opened automatically with a sound. The person who came was Dumbledore. He looked around the room with interest. He quickly walked over to the wooden table and sat down. "Are you happy?" Riddle raised his eyebrows. In half an hour, before he received a letter from Dumbledore, he is still resting in this room. A while he returned to the room before the appointed time and arranged everything. And from Dumbledore's brisk pace just now, and the undisguised smile on his lips, all of them were Dumbledore trying to tell him through body language, "I am happy." Riddle couldn't help but stroke his wand subconsciously, wondering what kind of news would make Dumbledore lose his composure like this. This is what makes Dumbledore want to share so strongly. Could it be that Dumbledore and Grindelwald had a child? Still healthy? It's related to a child who suddenly appeared. Dumbledore's mouth curled up even more. "Congratulations. Whose last name? Dumbledore or Grindelwald?" Riddle raised the coffee in front of him and clinked glasses. Dumbledore frowned. "I think you misunderstood. Not that kid. Instead, it was a child that appeared directly on Harry's bed. He was born not long ago. Did you come to me?" "Wait." Riddle seemed to have thought of something and rubbed his temple. "Could it be related to me? Is it an experiment left behind by me?" Born at this time, through Harry's identity as my Horcrux, he came to Hogwarts. That's understandable. But she's not a test subject. It's a coincidence. You must have heard of the Mirror World. Of course, I have seen with my own eyes the majestic monster summoned by Harry Potter, the Plutosaurus. Then you have also noticed the change in the nature of Harry's magic. I guess he didn't destroy his evil self. Instead, they became one. We talked about his strange physical changes and his nearly perfect magic. I have a guess. But according to my test, I am afraid it is the fact. Is it related to this child? Riddle's eyes narrowed because of a bad premonition. I'm afraid that when he merged with his other self, because of his identity as a living Horcrux, that power underwent some specialization. Maybe it is also related to the environment of the mirror world. That child I was talking about just appeared. Then she tonight, no, not long ago. Was she officially born? In Harry Potter's bed? How was it born? Childbirth? Is Harry Potter's belly big? Riddle smiled maliciously. Potter a wizard, you know. Harry Potter didn't drink the boy fertility potion. It must be very interesting for Harry Potter, who has a male body, to give birth to this child. I'm sorry. I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Harry didn't give birth to her. In other words, she was not born through a physical body. I have checked. It's more like she was born from an imaginary dimension. It's like a dream. Dream? Riddle's eyes began to sparkle with curiosity. Will she be like Merlin? Or was Merlin born in the same way? Legend has it that Merlin is the descendant of Nightmare. Maybe. After all, nightmares have always been a legend. Maybe they are creatures from the mirror world. Speaking of Merlin, Dumbledore couldn't help but become serious too. No, let me be direct. You mean she is actually the child of Harry Potter and I, just like you and Grindelwald? You are undoubtedly seeking revenge. Revenge for always teasing you about this. Are you mocking me for not being able to control my lower body? A surprising scene happened. This was the first time Dumbledore chose not to look into someone's eyes during a conversation. Instead, he looked at the still steaming coffee. The tips of his ears also turned pink. You guessed it, Tom. But the most urgent task now is not to talk about me and Gedler again. The children's affairs are the most important thing now. Have you thought it through? Do I need to tell Harry about your relationship with the child? Harry already knew this was his child. So did Minerva. But they all thought the child had no biological mother. But in fact, you are. My opinion? You want to tie me down? With this child? Or do you feel the danger from my recent changes? Riddle sneered. No, I also know about the magic you learned from the fat monk. I'm not worried about your changes. I just think that children deserve to have a healthy family, and 2 parents is one of them. Is she talented? Dumbledore smiled, knowing that this was Riddle's agreement. He then said, very good. Perhaps she really is another Merlin. Thanks to classmate 141,215,230,941,123 for the monthly ticket and other classmates for the recommendation and subscription. Chapter 690. Yes, I have a child. The team competition just ended. The second individual competition of the championship will be held next. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any other topics sweeping across Hogwarts. If there's, it is the TVs that will be installed in various colleges after the game. But this accident happened. The next day, the story of a baby suddenly appeared in Harry Potter's bed began to spread throughout Hogwarts. And the whole thing reached an unprecedented climax with Harry's words, yes, I have a child. Crazy. Ron was very surprised that he had reconciled with Ginny because of the child and could accompany Harry again. In response, Harry smiled like a loving father and said, this is the truth. I can't let her be a child without a father. I know how difficult it is to grow up in this environment. When Ginny first heard the news, she was immediately shocked. Just threw away her armor. I was sweating and feeling cold all over, and my UI syndrome suddenly struck. Life seems to have no color. Like a Saiyan whose tail is caught, those with the ability of Seastone, the Jinchuriki who extracted the tailed beasts, like Ultraman without light, the hope of survival was almost completely cut off. She even burst into tears. Wow, am I so clueless? Do you still have me, your fiancé, in your eyes? I was a stand-in from the beginning, right? Tell me. Who is the child's mother? If you, we'll break up. But fortunately, Ginny is not the heroine in a romance novel, and I have been ignoring her. After hearing that the child actually had no real mother, his attitude changed 360 degrees. From now on, I am her mother. Harry, when we have no classes, let's go to Professor McGonagall's in the evening. Ryan, who could hear Ginny's inner thoughts, laughed so hard that his jaw almost dropped. Because he clearly heard that when Ginny broke down and said such decisive words, she was thinking in her heart, I don't really want to break up. If Harry really wants it, then I can only kneel down in tears, hug his legs, and beg him to get back together with me. Please don't leave me, Harry. Sometimes, it's so interesting to be able to see into people's hearts. To this Ryan just wanted to say, she really did misunderstanding, Harry said this in the middle of the hall during lunch. "So, this child has no mother. I was just a medium like Merlin's mother, giving birth to her. Here I am his father. I hope will not look at her with prejudice. She is a child with parents. Ginny, my fiancée, has promised me that she is willing to be the mother of this child." In fact, judging from Ryan's summary, Harry's words mainly express two central ideas. This child is really related to him. The child was born in the same way as the great Merlin. The remaining, these words of his were endorsed by Dumbledore. Ginny is not her biological mother. Her willingness to receive the child was irrelevant. As for the so-called "don't be biased," Versailles, after talking about how his child was born as this matter fermented, the first person to come to Hogwarts was Sirius Black, who wanted to see his godson's child. Then he said a few words to Harry and Ginny, who came to see the children and left in a hurry. Kate, who wanted to have fun, was very dissatisfied. "Isn't Bellatrix Sirius' cousin? Family?" Ryan thought this was normal if Sirius could tell something was wrong. This certainly couldn't be hidden from Dumbledore. Purebloods have complicated blood relationships. Harry and Voldemort were the most outstanding, so their characteristics were most obvious in this child. The second is the dark and pure magic of the Black family, which is known to be the oldest and purest. As for the inherited trait of the Crouch family that tends toward will and mind, it is too hidden, and even hypnosis by Voldemort himself is difficult to detect. And the rest, the strong Acetor muscles, hard jaw, and almost steel-like teeth that come from Lestrange. The strong body that came with it was also regarded by Dumbledore as a manifestation of Harry's bloodline. The characteristics of Harry's body after being transformed by magic. The tremendous force that could knock down the fire dragon with the help of group magic, and Popeye's transfiguration, was the result of Harry's ancestral bloodline returning to his ancestral home. In the next period of time, Ryan also noticed that Harry Potter received a lot of letters like snow every day. You know, this is because Harry is a VVIP of the Owl Post Office, and there are extra receiving points set up with magic. In addition, there is a house dedicated to letters and gifts. Outsiders are not the only ones who think this way. Professor McGonagall, Madame Pomfrey, and Professor Sprout, who often look after the children, and Mrs. Weasley, who also came to Hogwarts once for her children. They also have such thoughts. Professor McGonagall suggested, "Why don't we name her Merlin? She's the only one who deserves that name." Madame Pomfrey suggested calling her Delis, the same name as the great Delis Derwent, the most prestigious healer at St. Mungo's Hospital before the 17s and later the headmistress of Hogwarts. Professor Sprout and Mrs. Weasley agreed. They both thought that the rest of the name is not important, but the middle name must be Ginevra. Ginny's full name is Ginevra Molly Weasley. Just like Ginny's middle name is her mother's, this is fair to Ginny. After all, this child has no blood relationship with Ginny. So the pressure came to Harry and Ginny. They had no problem with Ginevra being their middle name. But they were all troubled about what name to choose. What bothered Harry was that he had given many options, but Ginny rejected them all. Isn't Lily Ginevra Potter a bad name? Bella Ginevra Porter, who he had suggested in a daze, was also a good name. Although the sensitive Neville immediately pointed out that it was wrong. This name is too similar to the abbreviation of Bellatrix. So, it was mid-January, and there was still a week left before the individual competition. They still haven't decided on the child's name. Chapter 691, Tree Shadows in the Eyes. Whenever Harry entered the Great Hall would instantly return to silence. Then a buzzing sound began to spread, as if countless bees were buzzing. Some students even stood up to get a better look at Harry. Harry actually understood this very well. If he were in his place, he would do the same if he met such a person. Non-wizard approach. Subsequently, his personal image appeared on various products on the night of the Christmas ball. His story with Ginny became known to everyone in the school because of Ron, and last month, on the night after the team competition ended, another child appeared in his bed. He personally recognized his child's fatherhood. The child's talent is suspected to be comparable to Merlin's, not to mention that he himself is very famous in the wizarding world. Tomorrow is the time for the individual competition to begin. He also happens to be the most popular male warrior. So, although it has been almost a month since the child's incident, everyone is still like this. When he seemed like a new creature, not a classmate I had known for years, this is normal. So, when Harry came to the Great Hall after finishing his potions class, facing the scene that would scare a normal person, no response. I can't believe they were still like this. When Harry sat down, Ginny quickly handed over a plate of feed and said indignantly, "Help me get that plate of chicken legs." They looked plump and juicy. Ron, who sat down next, said to Ginny. I'm not your servant. Ron. Ginny said angrily to Ron. When he turned to Harry, his expression changed in a second and he said gently, Harry, do you want some roast chicken? No, I want to finish eating early and go see Mei Ling. Harry waved his hand. Name was finally decided because you don't have to have only one middle name. The child's full name is Mei Ling Lily Ginevra Bella Porter. Bella was also added to the name. Of course, this was not hidden from Neville. Harry explained that Bella means beautiful in Italian. The name represents his blessing for the child. It had nothing to do with Bellatrix. Then Neville had no objection. However, this does not mean that everyone likes this name. Professor McGonagall was very satisfied with Mei Ling. It was no different from what she had originally thought. But she thought the name was too long and consisted of exactly 5 parts. This reminded her of Dumbledore's full name, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. But Professor McGonagall just complained about this. Because she knew she was not the child's parent. Harry actually has more to say in this. This also allowed Harry and the others to finally know Dumbledore's full name. Back to the conversation, facing Harry's rejection. Ginny wasn't angry. She was used to Harry putting his children first these days. In addition to learning, besides going to Hogsmeade every Sunday without fail and taking time to see the dragons, he spends all his time with his children. Ginny didn't seem unhappy about it. On the contrary, she was somewhat relieved. Because even though she and Ron reconciled attention on the child and paid less attention to her and Ron, Ron's was undoubtedly reduced even more. This was undoubtedly a good thing for Ginny. Of what Harry's roommates, such as Ron, Neville, and Anthony, said that could give birth to a child with Harry. In the end, it created a dream that could be described as a life swap. Harry, let's go together later, Ginny said with a smile. Harry agreed. Ron waved his chicken leg. I want to go too. Is it still in Professor McGonagall's study on the 2nd floor? Advance. Oh, Ron took a bite of the chicken leg, and then said, by the way, Harry, don't you find it strange? How? There were a few times when we went there that Professor Riddle was there too. He's Voldemort, whispering. When did he become interested in a child? Will he? What do you mean? Harry frowned. The way Mei Ling was born is so mysterious, and her talent is the same as the legendary Merlin. Will this arouse his curiosity? He wants to study, that's enough. Ron, this is impossible. The fact that he could come to see the child meant that he had obtained Dumbledore's permission. The most important thing is that the child seems to like him very much. At the end, Harry's tone became a little erratic. There is also a hint of doubt. Perhaps this has something to do with Professor Riddle's recent changes. Form, unicorns like to be close to pure girls. At the same time, unicorns also possess a magical power that is pure and makes people easily feel favorable towards them. Maybe Mei Ling thought Professor Riddle was a unicorn. Ginny guessed. Maybe. Harry nodded heavily. They didn't speak again during the rest of the meal. Because they actually wanted to finish eating quickly. Lovingly as she babbled and fought with a dragon doll on the bed. She seemed to regard herself as a brave knight, wielding a sharp sword, pillow towel. Again and again, he rushed towards the doll on the other side of the crib. Ginny held the crib to keep it steady so that it would not sway as the baby girl Mei Ling fought. Ron, who was sitting on the sofa, he looked eagerly at the Hungarian hardtail model, as if he wanted to join in as well. As time went by, Ron seemed to notice something was wrong. Harry. I saw a shadow of a tree flash across the doll's eyes. And it's so agile. Chapter 692 The Secret of the Fire Dragon Doll. With a whizzing sound of the magic wand passing through the air, Harry seemed to have grown a series of hands. A series of afterimages were left from the head to the waist. By the time Ron saw it, the fire dragon doll had already flown into the air, far away from the crib. Only then did he realize that the moment he finished speaking, Harry pulled out his wand and separated the dragon doll from Mei Ling. He could only exclaim, so fast. Is it okay? Was the doll scared or cursed? Ginny quickly looked at the child. But Mei Ling just laughed and babbled, and her chubby little hands made a fuss about reaching towards Harry's wand. Seems like I want one too. Ginny breathed a sigh of relief and rolled her eyes at Ron. You must have seen it wrong. No, said Harry, who was controlling the wand. While letting the doll's eyes reflect on the fireplace, looking at him in the eye, there's indeed a wood in here. I seem to have seen it somewhere. This is the Forbidden Forest. The forest where Lyle, the name of a Hungarian tree warrior, lives. Doesn't this mean, Ron suddenly realized, this shows that this doll can be used for more than just solving puzzles. It also contains a channel. This channel connects the perspectives of the doll and the dragon. Ginny was a little hesitant. Isn't it too late? I mean, we have to be with the baby. Baby Mei-ling closed her eyes and curled up into a ball. Okay, Mei-ling is asleep. But Harry, you have already agreed on a slogan with Lyle. Is it too late to explore other methods of removing the Vila influence? The competition begins tomorrow. Ron tapped his head. Let me see. Tomorrow is Thursday. We don't have classes in the morning, Harry. No classes. So, while Mei-ling is still sleeping, let's find an empty room to study it. Harry shook the dragon doll in his hand. Late at night, in an empty room on the 3rd floor. Not even a powerful lighting charm, Harry. Ron, try the apparition spell again. Apparicium. Could it be that this approach was wrong from the beginning? Should we try going to the sky again? Ginny guessed. Harry shook his head. It has nothing to do with the environment. Skilled wizards often like to use their bodies to touch, smell, and listen to traces of magic. I knew this before, but I never understood it. But after watching Ron's magic and the dragon doll, I seem to have a clue. Harry's green eyes flashed with a gray light. Ron suddenly realized, no wonder you asked me to cast the spell. I was just watching there. Ginny looked at Harry with half admiration and half love. What were you looking at just now? Harry pushed up his glasses. There's a spell hidden in this. A very short spell. Its function is to connect the fire dragon sight with its own. Very clever too. The eyes are the most vulnerable part of any living thing. The power of the talisman is difficult to focus on. But it's perfect for the dragon's eyes. So, can we go back now? Ron stretched. No, it's in the form of a magic circle. I need to translate it into a spell that can be used. I'm going to the Forbidden Forest tomorrow to try this magic with Lyle sideways to give Ron a way back. Heard. Even if someone puts their ear to the crack of the door, they won't hear any sound. Could it be that Harry and Ginny were planning to do the same thing they did in the Rose Garden here again? Just as he thought of this, Ginny beside him said directly, why don't you leave when you know it? But I have to remind you that if you are discovered here. That's terrible. You're leaving with your heart? Bring a blanket? Do you still want to feel involved? Would you like to give Harry a back massage? The nodes of the magic circle for translation. Suddenly he coughed and said, when did I say I was going to do that? I think I still need to be careful. Ever since he knew that he could make someone thousands of miles away pregnant, even in a dream. He is a bit taboo about that matter. He was worried that even if he cleaned it afterwards, it would still be of little use. Ginny is still in school now. He already has a child. As for the child with Ginny, let's wait until he grows up and graduates. However, having said that, I think so too. But as Ginny approached, with a snap, the quill fell to the ground, making a crisp sound. All Harry knew was that the patch today was so white, so straight, and so smooth. Time, February 1994, 2. The second event of the championship. The individual competition is about to begin. See through their bedroom windows. A large cloud floating in the sky above Hogwarts. Then with the largest white cloud, they seem to form winding roads in the blue sky. And Harry woke up with screams. Harry thought that the protective spell had failed. They were discovered by other students had disappeared. The door outside was still tightly closed and there were bursts of exclamations. I never thought the school would make such a big deal. How do we get up there? On Boxburton's Pegasus, thanks to Yuchi Jinain for the monthly ticket and other classmates for the recommendation and subscription. Chapter 693 Lantern Festival Chapter. While else, even Harry, was lost in thought over the magnificent buildings in the sky, Ryan was enjoying his own personal vacation. It was a large, high-ceilinged room, as large as the Great Hall above, with gleaming copper pots and basins piled against the stone walls, and a large brick fireplace for everyone at the far end. In the corner, in a closet carved and hollowed out from a whole piece of stone, a small gold cup carved with a badger and 2 delicate earrings was shining brightly in the sparks. House elves in Hogwarts uniforms were busy in the room carrying silver plates, cups and other tableware. But the strange thing is that there is clearly a wizard here, eating at an immortal table that came from nowhere. You know, if a wizard comes, they will all scramble to serve him. Furthermore, the tableware he used was out of place here, 2 mahogany branches, polished and with gold wrapped around the ends, though has a large mouth and a small bottom, and a rooster is painted on the outside in simple colors such as red, dark green, and black. A porcelain plate with pine and bamboo painted in a few hasty strokes of monotonous black paint. The food this wizard eats is also very strange. The balls wrapped in white flour look sticky after being separated by the branches, like pastries. But it is placed in the soup with a little chopped green onion thyme when the individual competition began. But today, it has another name in Ryan and those who still maintain the Chinese customs of that ancient country in the Far East, the Lantern Festival. This is also why our Ryan would eat glutinous rice balls next to the Hufflepuff Gold Cup, the source of the gourmet halo. But the glutinous rice balls Ryan ate were salty. The filling is minced pork with green and red peppers and a little bit of spices. This is how Ryan's family ate when he was still Zhou Yi. However, it's still a bit of a pity for Ryan. Like Chu Zhang and Su Li, a bit player in the same grade as Ryan, and other Chinese, they all seemed not to notice the day. They all seem to have no concept of Chinese New Year. Since February 2nd, the first day of the Lunar New Year, until now, Ryan has been enjoying a 14-day vacation. He also deliberately did not go to class during the holidays' individual lessons these days. Only when the bell rings for the end of get out of class will he appear in the classroom again, beside them. Except for potions class, of course. Ryan didn't attend the potions class. Instead, he ate hot pot under the resentful gaze of his employee Snape. But Ryan wasn't always happy during these holidays. February 2nd is Valentine's Day. This day, girls will use magnifying glasses to check the boys' every move. The preparation of the gifts and the intention behind them are just basic requirements. If necessary, they will even look through their diaries and compare your current performance with your usual performance. If there is no progress, it means you are not taking the holiday seriously. Then it escalates further into a relationship between the two of them. Fortunately, Luna is a very rare stray girl. I don't care about the sense of ceremony at all. And the other girls don't look like the little fairies from the Far East. Likes to find fault and exaggerate. In the 20th century, the British wizarding world was not filled with information that led to conflicts between men and women, such as Douyin, microwave, and little sweet potato. A half-platform that takes sides. If that were true, Ryan suspected that Hermione would evolve into the first public figure in the British wizarding world. After all, even after being taught by Ryan, Hermione still complained for Bellatrix recently, saying things like, "Children should stay with their mothers, and this is too cruel to a mother." Although Ryan showed her later, the child was with Bella, and the mother died and the child survived, and then he shut up after heading into a dark future. But Ryan still felt that Hermione's logical thinking should not be overestimated. All Hermione has learned over the years is that it is better to have no books than to believe in them blindly is indeed kind, but her one-sided vision leads her to incorrect logic. This was something that could not be saved by her awakened ability of fictional reading, which brought her keen insight that was almost prophetic. Of course, this doesn't mean that Ryan doesn't love Hermione anymore. Hermione's flaws and stubbornness were part of the person Ryan fell in love with. It's good that Hermione can change. If it can't be changed, he won't force it. But don't blame him for criticizing it in private. Not complaining to others is his greatest tolerance. While Ryan was in the kitchen privately criticizing Hermione for her short-circuited brain, after marveling at the miracle in the sky, Harry finally remembered Ginny. The first person he found was Luna. After greeting the other Ryan, he learned from Luna that Ginny also had no classes this morning. Then he came to the auditorium. I ran into Ron, who was flirting with Lavender after a long time, down his arm around Lavender's shoulders. It was like running into one's husband's wife in the middle of an affair. Lavender mistakenly thought they were talking in private. She went straight back to her best friend Parvati at the Gryffindor table. She did not notice the strange atmosphere immediately as she did in her original world, and locked onto the correct target, Hermione. The same is true for Lavender. But Harry knew that there was another Ron hidden deep in Ron's heart. He saw through Ron's abnormality at a glance. He almost forgot about Ginny. He just accused, "It's abnormal for you to do this. I know about your relationship with Lavender. She is a good girl. She doesn't deserve to be treated like this by you. Didn't come back to the bedroom last night. You must have crossed the line with Ginny again. Don't try to change the subject." Harry couldn't help but smile bitterly and was about to retort. But Ginny's name also reminded him of the real thing he had to do. "Ron, have you seen Ginny? I found out early in the morning that she was gone." "Huh? You're really trying to change the subject. Didn't Ginny spend the night with you last night?" Harry quickly cast a whispering spell around him, She glared at Ron, who was talking loudly. "Why are you glaring at me? Can glaring at me clear you of the mistake of leading Ginny astray?" There. It's Krum. Chapter 694, Preparation before the game. As soon as he finished speaking, Krum found that his voice spread to a certain range. It was as if it had hit something and disappeared silently into the air. Harry shrugged and pulled Krum fully into range of the silencing charm he had cast. 3 minutes later. After hearing what Harry said, Krum relaxed his frown. "The puzzle? My sister is missing." Harry gestured for Ron to be quiet. He looked thoughtful. He looked at Krum. Could it be? Krum put on his deadpan face and said in an unusually cheerful tone, "You guessed right. That's the question. Ginny must have been taken hostage." Immediately looked at Krum unceremoniously. "What's your treasure?" "You already know Harry's treasure." "Ron." Harry had no time to stop him and could only shout Ron's name to express his dissatisfaction. He thought this was a bit disrespectful. Krum shrugged. "It's all right. Ron is right. They must have been looking for my baby for a long time, because I don't have anyone I care about in Durmstrang. Hogwarts, there are only you, Ron, Wilvis, Neville, Ginny, Lavender, and Gray. My partner at the Yule Ball." "Who's your baby then?" Ron asked. "Who else could it be? Of course it's Gray. We kept in touch after the dance. Every morning we would walk around the Black Lake together. But she didn't come today. Obviously." Krum looked at Ron in surprise after he finished speaking, to be wondering why he asked this question. After all, these people are all married, if Elvis's dance partner can be considered one. Only Gray was suitable. If you choose Lavender. Krum would wonder if Arthur Weasley, who is on the judging panel, didn't actually have a son named Ron. Victor's nickname. "Since Ginny is fine, I'll go see the kids first." The three of them separated. When Krum left, he was still wondering when Harry called him so intimately. However, Harry did not go to see the child. He just kept repeating the same thought in his mind. "It's over, he and Ginny have been caught." He learned about the members of the jury from Krum and invited Ginny to be a host. "Is there a possibility?" They came directly to the door of the room, called out Ginny. "If that's the case, then we're screwed, especially Mr. Weasley, who is also a member of the judging panel, and Dumbledore. How embarrassing it is to be caught by them in person, especially since he couldn't share this anxiety with Ron through words. He can think of it with his butt." Ron would definitely say, "I told you not to learn to keep your distance from Ginny next time," which is what he often said. To be honest, he was a little surprised why Ginny broke up with Ron some time ago. Especially since Ron never avoided telling her these things. "Why are you looking at me like that? Aren't you going to see the kids?" Ron suddenly felt that the way Harry looked at him was a little creepy. "No." Harry shifted his gaze. "I have successfully deciphered the magic that links the wizard's and the dragon's eye perspectives. But I haven't tried it yet. The game is in the afternoon. I'd better go to Lyle's place." "Oh." Ron was skeptical. If it was him in the past, he would definitely believe it unconditionally. But as a former Ron, he was a little smarter. At least he knew that in the eyes of others, he was actually an EQ idiot. Seeing Ron like this, Harry added, "Hagrid's acting is getting better and better." "Acting? Hagrid?" Ron forgot all his doubts. Harry struck while the iron was hot. "You remember how he cried when he let the cat out of the bag? But it turns out that the key to this game is not to agree on complicated and troublesome things like slogans and instructions with a fire dragon. Even though the dragons were affected by Hagrid's magic, they still had a hard time learning these things. Just like the time I was teaching Lyle. Teach it up, down, left and right. The key to the game actually lies in the fire dragon doll that suppresses all instructions with it. The fire dragon can see around through our eyes. You don't have to worry about anything else and can fly at full speed. It's just a pity that Lele is a Hungarian striker. He has no advantage in speed. If mine is a Peruvian viper-toothed dragon, I will definitely win this game. Even Furin will win." Nervous, he did it necessarily the secret after the fire dragon discovered doll ascends to the sky and resonates with the dragon skin earmuffs. Its spell will be activated. Firelight showed what the dragon's eyes looked like, said Harry. When he said this, he couldn't help feeling a little smug. Then they went to the auditorium and finished their lunch. Then he left towards the castle and headed towards the Forbidden Forest. Deep in the Forbidden Forest, at the end of a winding tree-lined path, the roar like that of a car starting came from deep inside. The dead and rotten branches' leaves were shaken down like raindrops onto the still slightly damp ground. In the open space in the center, Harry placed his right hand on the fire dragon, whose eyes were slightly closed. Also with eyes closed, Invisible air currents flowed gently around the bodies of both of them. The dead branches and leaves on the ground were slightly lifted up. Along with it came Harry's bangs. Boom boom boom. The Hungarian tree striker's heart began to beat violently. The golden threads extended from the place where Harry's palm touched the dragon's skin to the dragon's slightly closed eyes. The fire dragon opened its eyes, and the yellow vertical pupils like those of a cold-blooded animal had disappeared. Instead, there is a pair of emerald green, round pupils that belong to warm-blooded animals. Harry drew out his wand and lightly touched the air, and the water vapor on the ground and in the air condensed into a mirror. What appears in the mirror is a familiar unfamiliar yet self. The Hungarian tree leader's bright yellow eyes, filled with the pressure of a top predator, appeared between the whites of his eyes. Next to him, the fire dragon Lyle shook his tail covered with bronze spikes nervously. Just now, from its perspective, it seemed to have turned into the little man that Hagrid asked it to obey. If it hadn't recognized its own eyes, it might even think it was a little person to you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 695, The Body Approaching the Spiritual Realm. After eating the dumplings, Ryan, who traveled through space to Atlantis, suddenly blinked. The wedge he had planted in Harry's body once again transmitted data that gave Ryan some insight. Before this, Harry's good and evil, positive and negative, combined the power of two worlds to create perfect magic. This allowed Ryan to take a small step forward towards the LV7 Divine Realm. But now, the ancient and single-purpose magic from the Dragon Tamer has undergone a new qualitative change in Harry's hands. As Ryan thought, the invisible and intangible magic wrapped around the tentacles of thought knew the spell. Then, the invisible cause and effect took shape before Ryan's eyes. Dense spiderweb-like threads spread out from the talisman as the center. It spends time and space, recording the spell's origins, history, and information about all wizards who know and master it. Ryan also knew that in the history of wizards, this spell originated from the 13th century wizard Lord Aegon Targaryen. In addition to ordinary muggles, his territory also has a wide variety of fire dragons. The Targaryens have a trait of extremely high tolerance to heat. Fire to them is like water to humans. If it is the dragon fire of a fire dragon, it can even make them feel full. Fire dragons also consider them as their own kind. This makes them closer to dragons than other wizards. Many dragon-related spells were also created. Most of the Dragon Tamer's magic also comes from them. However, this was also the reason for the downfall of this powerful wizard family. Most of their spells are very simple. Can only be used on fire dragons. Dragons are to them what wizards are to their ones that the dragon developed a liking for Harry, just like it did for Hagrid. Harry's body also underwent some qualitative changes. Under Ryan's X-ray-like vision that can see a person's entire body from bone marrow to hair, the flesh beneath Harry's skin was even slowly developing into dragon scales. And the effect of the spell seemed to have changed from a temporary link to a permanent one. Harry can now exit this link at any time and restore himself to his original state, as if nothing had happened. But if you want to use this talisman again in the future, you only need to think about it. He can also control whose perspective is dominant. Of course, that is if he can realize the disconnect in time. Back to Ryan. Under this connection with Harry, he also obtained the secret of the dragon's deepest power. This was something he could not quickly and intuitively gain through dissection and observation alone. But now, he has obtained the secrets from the ancient dragon species deep in the blood of modern degenerated fire dragons could not reach it by going back in time at that time. The ancient dragons had another name, the embodiment of natural phenomena and disasters. They are power itself, the most intuitive manifestation of destructive power. The fire dragon scales that can now defend against most spells are just the result of being infected by this kind of direct violence. The most intuitive manifestation is that the body transformation level 6, 79% minus 84%. Every slight progress in the LV6 field means the difference between heaven and earth with a gap of 1%, between wizards with the same combat awareness and magical knowledge. The letting one can easily defeat the latter. It is conceivable how much progress this has brought to Ryan. His body completely absorbed the pure violence of the ancient dragons, and was one step closer to the realm of the gods. In the wizarding world, this is a feat that has never been achieved by any wizard. Even the ancient wizards who are called gods by modern wizards. Perhaps due to the transformation and improvement of their physical magic power, the nature of their physical magic power body has also changed. But apart from special magic transformation, what is improved are only the magic affinity, vitality, magic resistance and other aspects that do not directly improve strength and physical resistance. Even a divine wizard could be defeated by a muggle with innate supernatural powers just by relying on his physical body more easily with a level 3 body transformation. Perhaps it would be possible to kill a level 6 demigod wizard with a speed beyond the physique of an ordinary person. This was the direction Ryan was going to take to overtake at the beginning. After all, wizards in the Harry Potter world may have longer health bars than muggles, more resistant to magic, but if they are not transformed by magic, they can still suffer injuries that are fatal to muggles. Unlike Ryan, his body has improved in all aspects: physical resistance, magic resistance, endurance, vitality and magical adaptability all grow synchronously. His body transformation skill can be regarded as the ultimate magic that combines multiple magical transformations. If you don't have the innate ability to get results as long as you work hard, the miracle that always goes in the right direction, even all the wizards in the global wizarding world, let's study magic transformation and body transformation together. A miracle that could not be achieved even after a century. This also shows how important this progress is to Ryan. However, this was merely the result of a wedge planted in Harry's body on a whim in early autumn. "Harry, you are worthy of being my most important cauldron," Ryan murmured. After that, Ryan of Atlanta stepped over the gray film that appeared out of thin air and appeared in front of Harry. After a crisp snap of fingers, Harry's eyes returned to normal. "Ryan, you?" Harry was stunned. The mirror in front of him also lost its magical power due to surprise and turned into water vapor. Hungarian striker Lyle, who had just tilted his head to see something, quickly lowered his head, covered his eyes. A fear that came from the deepest part of his blood swept through his body. If Ryan hadn't been in control, he might have scared himself to death. "You have to learn to control it." Ryan nodded, gently frightened. Ryan pointed out directly, "You have a contract with a Pluto dragon, which is the closest to the ancient dragon, and you have extraordinary magic power. That magic changes in your hands. If I hadn't stopped you just now, your body might have memorized this temporary change and made it permanent." "You mean, if I use it next time, I won't?" "Yes, your body has been transformed by magic. Your blood has also been replaced by potions. If your magic power wasn't so perfect, you would subconsciously want to learn the advantages of the strange fire dragon magic that appeared in your body. There will be no such change at all. When you use it later, your body will have memorized the process of turning from dragon scales into flesh and blood. There is no need to worry about the dragon's characteristics becoming permanent." Chapter 696, Food Magic. "That's good. Thanks to you, Ryan." Harry breathed a sigh of relief. However, Harry didn't have time to express his thanks further. With a sentence, "Okay, I should go now," Ryan disappeared. Just as Harry was wondering why Ryan was walking so fast, a familiar voice came from a distance. "That was the last person I wanted to see right now." Arthur Weasley met Ron at Hagrid's. "You guessed the riddle. Molly is worried about you." Mr. Weasley's words were a little incoherent. Harry felt a little desperate, thinking that his guess had really become a reality. Mr. Weasley must have something to say about the game if he was here. The fact that he took so long to get to the point and his evasive eyes showed this point. But the fire dragon Lyle was still lying on the ground with his eyes covered. Harry couldn't use the excuse that dragons were too dangerous and he was not used to strangers. After 3 minutes, he decided to break the jar and throw it away. So he asked stiffly, "Was Dumbledore here this morning?" At 2 p.m., all warriors must meet at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. In order, they surround their corresponding dragons to the Quidditch pitch above Hogwarts. That will be the starting point of the entire track. Ryan's departure was actually not due to the appearance of Arthur Weasley. After all, he can completely hide his presence. Stay aside openly. But the main reason is that he is not used to being with boys. Even Harry, who was considered his friend. And if he had been there, he wouldn't have seen the funny scene where Harry threw up his hands and Arthur Weasley asked you if he could clean it up. Next, he just needs to wait for the game to start. But first, he had something to complete with Hermione. The time is 1, in the Great Hall of Hogwarts, started discussing this. And from time to time, look up at the big white cloud in the magic ceiling. And the familiar yet strange Quidditch pitch located in the real world. They were all looking forward to how brilliant and colorful their way up would be. However, There was a large empty seat in the middle of the Ravenclaw table. The students sitting on both sides were also very quiet and seemed out of place. Hermione, recite it to me again. It was Ryan who said this. Not long ago, she accidentally learned the secret from Ryan that Ryan actually didn't need to eat. She became interested in this. I wanted to learn this magic that allows me to give up food. This way she could save time on meals and do something she thought was more valuable, reading, practicing magic, etc. Those who eat grass are good at running but stupid. Those who eat meat are brave but fierce. Those who eat grains are wise and clever. Those who eat air are divine and long-lived. And those who do not eat are immortal and divine. Hermione recited, this comes from the Book of Rites by Dida of the Western Han Dynasty. It means, those who eat grass are good at walking but dull. Those who eat meat are brave and strong. Those who eat grains are smart and clever. Those who eat the air of heaven and earth have bright eyes and long life. And those who eat nothing are immortal gods. The magic of giving up food that I am going to teach you comes from this. The energy of heaven and earth. Here is a term in the Far East wizarding world. If you change it to the British side, you might as well convert it into a magical magnetic field. The magical magnetic field is everywhere, but where wizards gather, it is stronger. The magical aura of Hogwarts, which has been open for 1,000 years, is undoubtedly the strongest, so much so that all electrical appliances cannot be used at Hogwarts for young wizards to learn magic with corresponding traces. Although the food sacrificing magic I mentioned is something I just invented, I have used it many times in the past, leaving behind corresponding magical traces. Then, what else do I need to prepare? No. You don't have to learn it from scratch. It is difficult in itself. It tests not your breadth of knowledge, but the depth of your magical field. It was because you prayed to the demonic moon that I transformed into. Are you going to? Hermione looked around. Although she knew that others couldn't see Ryan. But with so many people around, wouldn't it be a bit strange? Ryan said before that if she were to go to the auditorium, she could master the magic of food sacrifice in half an hour without making it too complicated. If this magic is really as difficult as the Phoenix incarnation, then Ryan would probably have to transform into the moon again, accept her prayers, and guide the magic of the moon to descend upon her body. No. Ryan shook his head. You've heard of the Goblet Fairy Fire. A very precious magical flame. Even the most powerful wizard can only create a few in his limited life. It is the demonic moon where you learn the magic of sacrifice. The secret of its creation, birth, and eternal immortality is actually related to the magical magnetic field. It can absorb the power of heaven and earth inexhaustibly to maintain its own eternal immortality up food, using the energy of heaven and earth, that is, the magical magnetic field, as the basis for its own existence. Look at this. Ryan waved his wand and a piece of parchment appeared in Hermione's hand. It was covered with densely packed spells. This is the spell of food relinquishing magic. Very long, more akin to ancient magic. It's also more difficult. But at your level, you can get started right away as empty your mind and body. Accept it. It will act as a bridge between you and the magical magnetic field, and the power of the magical magnetic field will be converted into the nutrients you need. The conversion process is complex. But you don't need to remember. They have been reduced to spells. You just have to get used to it. When you are hungry, recite the mantra silently and instead, you use your spells to absorb and transform the power of the magical magnetic field. Hermione couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. That's how it was in the early stages. But as time goes by, your body will remember the Goblet Fairy Fire absorbing the magic magnetic field, and the magic power in your body will gather into a network when you chant the spell. Steps to convert magical magnetic fields into nutrients. Okay, let's get started. Ryan stretched out his right hand. A white, transparent flame that seemed to have concentrated the spiritual charm of heaven and earth appeared in Ryan's hand. Hermione spread the parchment out on the table. She looked at the phonetic symbols noted below the spell and opened her teeth. Chapter 697, a solution that doesn't take 10 days. Hermione recited the long and difficult spell accurately one by one. On the snow-white skin, silvery white lines began to spread from the center of the eyebrows. Seeing this, Ryan smiled slightly, and a clear and textured voice began to sound. You have to imagine, too. Imagine that you are awakened from your trance when a ray of morning light brushes across your face. You have just regained awareness of your own existence. Around her, Ryan's words seemed to be filled with a magic convincing. Okay. Ryan knocked on the table. Hermione opened her eyes. She seemed to be at the bottom of a hot spring. The whole body was enveloped by a warm current at the same time. The hunger in her stomach, which was caused by eating very little at noon, disappeared as the heat flowed up. She is full. How long did it take? Hermione asked subconsciously when she realized that she had succeeded. She looked around again. According to her expectation, it was now 2 o'clock. The deans of each college had said before when they led them to the auditorium that the competition would begin at 2 o'clock, but she looked left and right, and there was no change around her. Dumbledore's seat at the staff table remained empty. Several other school headmasters and Arthur Weasley from the Ministry of Magic were also missing. You should have guessed it. Ryan shrugged, plus the 3 minutes of chanting. A total of 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So soon. Hermione out of the thin air, floating in midair. Hermione touched her forehead in surprise, and found a flame mark there. Ryan then said, "You found it. The divine fire of Goblet still burns between your brows. This magic is not as simple as you think. When it disappears completely, you have truly learned this magic. Now you can only use it to absorb the power of the magical magnetic field and fill your stomach. You say, is it fast? Not fast. But how long will it take me to learn it formally? And do I really have to recite the spell every time before using it, as you said before? It takes 3 minutes. This way it's not so useless. I can finish it in 3 minutes if I eat faster." Hermione rubbed her brow in front of the mirror. "Will you officially learn it? See if you use it diligently. If you insist on giving up your normal diet for 10 days, the mark will disappear. As for the spell, this is not necessary. I said that just to make you take it seriously. To avoid mistakes. Focus your mind on the center of your eyebrows and imagine that there is a flame burning there. The food-giving magic will be activated. Total. I'll try." Hermione closed her eyes and tightened her face. The flame flick mark between the eyebrows brightened and brightened. Fairy fire can continuously absorb the power of the magical magnetic field. That's because it is fire itself. Unstable plasma. It has always been in a state of loss. Only then can you accept the power of the magical magnetic field. Your own hunger is your loss. Before the substance transformed by the magical magnetic field that can serve as nutrients for the body is completely digested, you are always in a state of full. If you pour it in, it will just overflow. This isn't magic. Nutrients after I digest half of them? Like except for 3 meals a day. Some people eat smaller meals more often. This substance is not really a satiety-giving food. It is a force that frees you from the concept of eating and keeps you full, healthy, and your body functioning normally. Before this substance disappears, you will never feel hungry. When you feel hungry, it means you have digested it completely, Ryan explained. Wait, put it this way. If I sleep, it is digested. Will I be awakened by hunger? Hermione thought of a possibility. Normally no. Although people consume energy when they sleep, most of their muscles are in a state of low activity. Especially the nervous system, there is basically no activity in the nerves of the limbs. There are only low consumption activities such as heartbeat, breathing, and intestinal peristalsis. Compared to the daytime, it is much lower. Aha. I know. What do you know? If I do high-intensity exercise, I get hungry faster. It can be like this. Ryan's eyes rolled and he suddenly stretched out his tone. I suddenly remembered thirst is also hunger in a sense. What did you say? Hermione wiggled her hips nervously. She suddenly felt that Ryan in front of her seemed to have turned into a big bad wolf that wanted to eat her alive. I said, even though you are too young, mosquitoes buzz. As the last word was uttered, time stopped. The noise in the auditorium suddenly stopped. Only the breathing of Hermione and Ryan remained. A gray film emerged from the air and passed through the bodies of the two people. After an hour, the Great Hall at Hogwarts. The two reappeared. Time also began to flow. However, this time, the flame between Hermione's brows burned normally, emitting a silvery white light. No matter how Ryan teased her, she remained silent and kept her head down. Just when Ryan thought Hermione would continue like this, she shouted like a landslide and tsunami came from the students near the entrance hall. Hermione raised her head slightly and looked towards the hallway with Ryan. Chapter 698, Fire Dragon with Chewing. As the spiral staircase appeared, the professors at the staff desk stood up one after another. Deans of the 4 colleges, they all walked to the long table of their own college. He led them out of the castle and came to the open space in front of the entrance hall, in front of the spiral staircase. Luna, Kate and Penelope. In the long line of Ravenclaws, he had a place in the front, middle and back. This also makes Ryan, whose perception is deliberately reduced for the sake of being more interesting, he saw the spiral staircase and the entire building on it more completely than anyone else present. Its design seems to reference the fairy tale of Jack and the Beanstalk. However, the vines that grew from the magic beans in the story were replaced by the spiral ladder in front of us. According to Ryan's observation, the design of the ladder itself is similar to the escalator in the subway. The steps and handrails were moving from bottom to top at an extremely slow speed. Plus, it's covered with cloud-like material, making it very inconspicuous. From the discussions around me, I learned that most students mistakenly thought they had to climb up by themselves. Some students who don't like sports are troubled by it. In addition to their fear of heights, they were even more worried about getting tired halfway through the walk, and their legs becoming weak with fear and accidentally falling down. Hermione seemed to be one of them. Because of being with Ryan, she does not come into contact with broomsticks as often as she does in the original world line, where she is Harry and Ron's friend. Aside from flying lessons, she had little exposure. During the flying class, we just circled at low altitude. Just like any other student who is afraid of heights. Ryan, completely forget about your own physical fitness. You have to know that the effects of the potions that Hermione often drinks have mostly been guided by Ryan towards the direction of resistance. In this way, although Hermione is not as strong as Harry and Neville who have been transformed by magic, she also does not have the sufficient physical strength and endurance of the two. But in terms of physical defense, Hermione far surpassed the two. It can be said that even if she didn't use any magic, she would not suffer any damage if she jumped from the Quidditch field, which is nearly 700 feet high. But Hermione was so frightened that her legs went clean. However, Ryan's fun didn't last long. A distant, clear voice began to sound from the clouds, like the whisper of a god in heaven. Everyone, before the warriors come on stage. After your respective leaders speak up, you all need to divide into 2 columns according to your colleges and schools and go up the ladder. Then, Professor McGonagall of Gryffindor stood up and walked to the right side of the ladder. Following her order, the Gryffindor students divided into 2 columns and walked towards the spiral staircase. It's alive. It can move. The Weasley twins, standing in the front row, were the first to discover the secret of the ladder's steps and handrail sliding upwards. The two of them grinned and squeezed past Percy, who was at the front. Under the admonition of Professor McGonagall, they were the first to step onto the ladder. After someone stepped on it, the ladder started to move quickly. Even the students from Durmstrang, who were farthest away from the ladder and at the edge of the Black Lake, discovered the secret of its movement. Be careful. Remember to hold on to the handrails. Just like that, the Weasley twins, followed by Percy, and the other Gryffindor students, grasped the handrails tightly and began to sail almost towards the clouds under the admonition of Professor McGonagall. After all the Gryffindor students disappeared from their sight, Professor McGonagall suddenly stood on the ladder. Disappeared in the clouds. Then, Professor Flitwick spoke. Because Ryan also stood with Kate and Penelope. Without anyone else noticing, he took the lead and stood on the ladder. This feeling under my feet is completely different from before. Ryan couldn't help but sigh. Stepping on it is like stepping on cotton candy. Springy, yet firm. My feet seemed to sink into it. Kate blinked her big eyes to Ryan's right. It took about a minute or so. They arrived in the cloud. The Quidditch pitch was decorated similarly to the last team match. But this time, in addition to the center of the stadium, the floor, chairs and railings of the audience seats were also transformed into cloud-like substances. What's even more interesting is that the tracks of the ladder did not end until they stepped onto the platform. Ryan and his companions were like items being transported on the tracks of the subway of the judgment table, sat on the floating white clouds. In front of them is a 100 crawling quietly on the ground. Dragon's abdomen is also tightly surrounded by a belly band. The buckles at both ends of the belly strap are fastened to a saddle-like cushion on the fire dragon's back. There are semicircular metal hangings on both sides of the cushion. Even the dullest person could see it now. It's the pedal just came down the ladder and were looking for a seat were no exception. The perspective of the screen also began to shift, as if the camera operator knew what the students in the stands were thinking. Next, a newly built cabin appeared in front of everyone. Judging from the style, it should be the work of Hagrid. As the perspective shifted, the door of the cabin opened. 5 figures walked out of the wooden house, one after another. Twins exclaimed that their father was standing here. Next came the 4 warriors led by Furin. They all changed into smart clothes. The chest, shoulders, legs, knees and calves are covered with vertical grooves, and equipped with a hood and cape. But the colors of the clothes vary. The same color as the robes of the 4 schools' uniforms. Fleur's was light blue, Crumb's was blood red, Elvis was bright green, and Harry's was black. Chapter 699, All Living Things. The sunlight passed through the gaps in the trees and fell on the golden hair that shone with silver light. A few strands of knotty hair were blown by the wind and stuck to the girl's glowing white cheeks. And she gently bit into those seductive thin lips that were glistening with water. The light blue warrior uniform highlights her exquisite and beautiful body. The attention of the other warriors around and the mighty fire dragon were all taken away by her. I don't know who is controlling the camera. Stadium filled up. The bee-like buzzing sound that filled the stands suddenly stopped when the camera moved to Fleur. They were all immersed in this Van Gogh painting. For a moment, I even forgot to breathe. Furin's eyes on the screen moved, as if she had noticed something. White teeth, which sparkled in the sunlight. It seemed like a stream of clear spring water, waking up in the stands. The same thing happened to the unknown cameraman, and the camera began to shift. Mr. Weasley appeared in the camera as if the Mediterranean Sea was blown by the wind. The sharp contrast between beauty and ugliness, relatively speaking, before made the buzz sound again. But this time they were no longer discussing the fire dragon, the warriors' uniforms, or the decoration of the stands. But words like "my eyes are blind." Even Ginny, the only little girl in the Weasley family, couldn't help but frown at this scene. Mr. Weasley was clearly unaware of the reaction in the stands, though. He was so enthusiastic that he almost jumped and said, "Hello everyone. I believe that through the golden snitch in front of me, everyone should have guessed the basic format of the game. Today's game will be held on Sky. Each warrior wears a uniform made from the materials processed in your alchemy class these days. They will ride on fire dragons and travel through a track made up of clouds. Various magical traps are hidden in these clouds and our special guest block. Well, you're in for a treat for sure. However, our warriors will also face the danger of falling from high altitudes, but don't worry, the magic you put into these uniforms will protect them. We checked them all." He paused, turned his head, and the camera turned to the 4 warriors again, but at this moment, they were riding on the corresponding fire dragons as expected. The combination of hibiscus and the Australian egg white eye, known as the most beautiful fire dragon, made everyone lose their minds for a moment. However, Mr. Weasley seemed to have expected this out. A taste of air was stirred up on the ground. The camera blurred for a moment, and soon focused on the yellow shadow in the front, the Peruvian venom-toothed dragon, known as the fastest. Elvis of Castrobuse put on a hood and goggles he had prepared, and with his cloak fluttering in the wind, he looked particularly heroic. Many students contributed waves of cheers for him. Then, the picture on the screen was divided into 2. On the other side, the Hebridean black dragon followed closely behind, and Crumb, who was squinting and staring at the front with his face wrinkled by the wind, soon appeared. Finally, the screen is divided into 4 equal parts. With the final appearance of Harry and the Hungarian Treehawk, the 4 warriors and their dragons all appeared on the screen in their entirety. Most of the students in the stands cheered for the warriors from their own academy. Camera that flashed by like a stunning beauty fell at her feet. Zacharias is one of them. He jumped up and down among Dudley's group of people who clearly supported Harry, shouting, "My goddess is the best. Harry Potter is not Hufflepuff." When he was pinned to the ground by the students around him, he pointed at Furin, who was fixing her hair in the wind, and shouted, "The goddess is looking at me. You at me. It's worth it." His mouth was crooked, his eyes were squinting, and his saliva was flying. She has the style of the heroine in the drama Runaway Sweetheart. Ryan couldn't help but think of this cult classic. Look, even Dudley chose to give up the idea of teaching him a lesson. It was just a stunner with reduced power, knocking him out. Then he looked at Harry, who was the last one to fall, to wash his eyes. However, he found that almost no one around he was looking at the screen anymore, but he understood it immediately. The sound of the fire dragon's huge body through the air became louder and louder, forming a sharp contrast with a monotonous whistling sound on the screen that always maintained the same tone. He stood up subconsciously. The same was true for the other students around, especially the students of Castrobuse. They jumped and waved their hands, cutting toward the sky. Dean's scarf also flew up and got tangled in Professor McGonagall's bun. What's worse is that she hasn't noticed. I thought it was because of the wind. Let's get back to the guilt behind this storm. The Peruvian venomous dragon seemed to be venting its frustration of not having flown for a long time. It flew around the entire stadium at a speed that was invisible to the naked eye. Finally, he landed reluctantly in the center of the stadium. Elvis jumped off the fire dragon. What followed was cheers like a landslide and tsunami in the last individual competition. They had seen the Peruvian venom-toothed dragon and its terrifying speed, but because the fire dragon was focusing its attention on Elvis at the time, it never approached the stands this time. They truly realized the power of this so-called fastest fire dragon. Some senior students who boasted that they could even face a venomous dragon could only sit down with their faces covered. That was the case with Flint from Slytherin. He is in 7th grade this year if this year's Quidditch competition is not cancelled. This will be his last year as a Quidditch player, but all this was taken away by the competition. But the house leaked when it rained all night last year. In order to defeat Diggory, he borrowed his family's influence in the Ministry of Magic and used some unconventional tactics. Nothing would have happened in the past, but then Arthur Weasley and Ms. Bones came to power. We are already fighting against the old forces. Their family was the target of criticism because of this incident. Now, he wouldn't have to worry about being forced into the Ministry of Magic after graduation. You can now pursue your Quidditch dream without any worries. He blamed it all on the championship. If I hadn't heard about it last year. If he chooses to take the risk, nothing will happen to his family. So he just couldn't stand the Warriors' choice but to shut up in disappointment. Not a word. Thanks to classmate Kun for the monthly ticket and other classmates for the recommendation and subscription. Chapter 700, The Treasure on the Stone Platform. The scene returns to Ryan. There was a corner in the stands with several empty seats around it. The howling wind had no effect on this place. Luna exposed her smooth little feet to the air, and with a wisp of hot steam coming out, they looked particularly tempting. If you ignore the shape, it looks like a freshly baked meat bun. When Ryan was still Jo-Yi, he was a student in high school and walked to and from school every day. At that time, besides noodles with soybean paste, his favorite thing was to buy a bag of hot meat buns. Hold it in the palm of your hand. So, he now held Luna's little feet tightly against his stomach. That's understandable to get the hint. Are you cold? Ryan hugged Luna Lionrin and her feet into his arms and said softly, "Are you still cold? Buzz, you know what? Hermione just asked me to learn a very powerful magic." As soon as she heard Hermione's name, Luna immediately became a different person. It's like a little white rabbit turning into an aggressive little white cat. Although the almost prophetic intuition that awakened after her magic transformation told her that Ryan had some bad intentions. But she also felt that Ryan was not lying. Don't just want what Hermione has, I want it too. No, I want to be even better. Just like my purr is more powerful than Crookshanks. Oh, in that case, you have to dehydrate more. No, I mean work harder. That intuitive feeling is getting more and more wrong. But facing Hermione, who is incompatible with herself and was like the opposite of herself in the mirror, she still stiffened her neck and said, "I want it now." Ryan's mouth curled up even more. Not watching the game. Luna buried herself in Ryan's arms and said in a muffled voice, "I won't watch it. Fiorin will definitely win. I don't like her." Then, the figures of the two faded into the air. On the field, Hermione, who was sitting on Ryan's lap, looked suspiciously not far away. When did an extra space appear there? But Fiorin's aggressive, extremely beautiful face and the confidence that emanated from her bones still attracted her attention. Sitting on a flying broomstick, with a messy hair, flying to the other four members of the jury in midair, Arthur Weasley arrived on his own white cloud. Fiorin immediately frowned. His eyes, as watery as a blue lake, began to scan all over the sand. Ryan, he must be fine. Harry turned his head and whispered as if possessed. Do you think he will be discovered by these mediocre people? I'm looking for my sister Gabrielle. Fleur raised an eyebrow. But considering that Harry was Ryan's younger brother, she still said a few words. But it also attracted the attention of others on the side. Simultaneously gave up their search for their treasure, moved inconspicuously towards Fleur and Harry. The leaky cauldron. The large group of drinkers were almost crowding around the TV. I also noticed the actions of several warriors. Harry Potter is hitting on that French beauty. I say, I remember Harry's engaged, right? I know. Enforcement. He is in charge of the Muggle Artifacts Prohibition Office, where I went to register my modified game console the day before yesterday. Ahoha. I am so ignorant. I used to work in that department. I also began assigned my nephew Slack to that department. So, you better be careful. The person you are talking to now is the uncle of the future head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Dumbledore stood up and said, I just noticed it. Treasure is on TV. The faint voices of students in the stands began to disappear and it became extremely quiet. The same is true in bars. Dumbledore drew his wand and pointed it toward the sky. A stone platform made entirely of white marble appeared above their heads. The picture on TV suddenly became a little dim. The stone platform blocked the sunlight and slowly rotated itself in a self-centered manner while maintaining a stable horizontal level. Then, it stopped. White rectangular stones fell from the stone platform one by one, and finally formed stone steps half suspended in the air. The camera began to shift again. What appeared on the TV and stadium screens was the full view of the stone platform. On the stone platform, 4 stone pillars with carvings of the stages of a beautiful woman's transformation into a strange creature with a bird's head and a human body stood in the center. 4 girls were chained to 4 stone pillars. Their sequence seems to be arranged from largest to smallest. The one on the far left is a tall-haired witch wearing a Hogwarts uniform with a Slytherin logo on her body. The next one was a witch who was a little shorter, with a bit of childishness still on her face, probably in the 4th grade, wearing a bright green robe. Next was Ginny, with her fiery red hair that made it clear she was from the Weasley family. The last one was an 8-year-old girl. Her silvery golden hair made everyone realize that she should be the sister of the warrior Fleur-Delacour. All 4 of them looked like they were sleeping soundly, their heads drooping cleanly on their shoulders. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.